welcome. Tonight is the night, Federal Election 2025. It's great to have you with us. This could be a historic evening. My name is Kira Stevens. I'll be here with you all evening. Beside me here all night will be my co-host, Ryan DeGroot. Are we set for a wild evening, Ryan?
I sure am. Anything could happen tonight. Canada is facing so many challenges, it's crazy. Experts are calling this moment in Canadian history unprecedented.
Absolutely. Canada faces a totally changed relationship with our neighbors down south. Who can stand up to Donald Trump?
We're basically this close to being in a new Cold War with Russia. Hundreds of Canadian soldiers are already on the Russian border. This could soon end up a shooting war. Canadians have to decide who can keep us best safe and protect democracy overseas.
Let me introduce two of the friends we have joining us this evening. We have Carrie Oriette, who is a longtime newspaper columnist, a political advisor, a trusted host and commentator at community events and debates, and of course, as a financial advisor, he manages half the money in this town. Carrie, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
And then we also have Brody Burr, who is the president of the Brandon University Political Science Student Club. He's graduated next month from political science and then headed to law school in the fall. And he's also a well-known actor in our town.
So guys, let's just quickly list the major issues that make this election so important. Start with you, Brody.
Yeah, I think one of the critical issues I think that has been really brought up by all parties within this election is the cost of living for all ages, I think. You know, as a young person, I can speak to a lot of those issues about the cost of living, but I think it goes across all age groups. And I think if you look at each, whether it be the NDP, the Conservatives, the Bloc Québécois, or, you know, the NDP, and they all have a lot of issues surrounding that. And I think there's a lot of other issues that we could talk about here tonight, but I think that's one of the big ones that's being seen right now. It's just the rise of housing costs, groceries, all of the essential things that everyone in life needs to function.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. What about you, Carrie? Anything on the list that Brody missed?
You know, I thought that you hit on it in your intro, Ryan, which was, I think, who stands up best to U.S. President Donald Trump, and whether or not they stand up best, but they are perceived by Canadians to be strongest in their relationship going forward with President Trump. I think that is the single most important issue of this election, and I think it is the undercurrent to everything else we're going to be discussing tonight.
Yes, so with those issues, those will be the issues that we are wrestling with. And tonight we are at the sharp end of the political stick. Who are Canadians going to pick to lead us through the hurricanes that might be ahead? Then with us all night here in the studio is our esteemed results reporter, Erica Brake. Erica will give us the goods on who's winning or losing. So, Erica, take us through the results you're watching for us this evening.
Thanks, Kira. It's good to be here. Let's get right into it. We actually already have our first results, so let's start there. Polls closed about 2 hours ago at the Atlantic, with Newfoundland and Labrador just a little bit earlier. These are very early, so it is hard to say whether they indicate any kind of shift yet, but the Liberals are currently ahead of the Conservatives. They have taken and held 5 ridings in total: Avalon, Acadia Bathurst, Cape Spear, Labrador, and Beausejour, while the Conservatives have held the central Newfoundland riding and have flipped the Long Range Mountains riding. So let's take a look at where things stood after the last federal election in 2021. As you can see, Liberals beat the Conservatives on a scale of 3-1. So now let's go through a list of the ridings we're following throughout the night. And a good place to start is with where the polls are closing and at what times. Newfoundland, polls on the Rock closed at 6 p.m. our time. In the Atlantic, polls closed at around 6:30. Now we get into the time when the results come pouring in. Quebec closes at 8:30 our time. Ontario also closes at 8:30 our time. Together, those two provinces have more seats in Parliament than the rest of the country combined. That's where elections are usually won or lost. On to Manitoba, we also see polls close at 8:30. You might be starting to notice a bit of a pattern. Everybody gets 12 hours to vote, but the startings are staggered so that all the polls close within a fairly close time frame. If we look at Saskatchewan, again, polls close at 8:30 p.m. our time. In Alberta, you guessed it, also closes at 8:30. BC polls close at 9 p.m. So this often means that we already know which party has won the election before votes are even being counted in British Columbia. And that's it for now. Results are only trickling in at first, but the drops become an ocean by 9 o'clock our time.
So Erica, would you like to make a prediction about where the election's going?
Nope. That is above my pay grade, Kira, which is nothing, I guess, since I'm a student. I'll leave predictions for others.
Sounds good, Erica. Thank you. We'll check in again in a few minutes. I think this is a good opportunity for everyone to put their cards on the table. Let's do some predicting.
But no wagering, please, because Assiniboine did not give us a gambling license. So, group, by the end of the night, where are we going to be? Carrie?
Brody and I have been chatting about this quite a bit. We've looked at 338 and a number of other websites. We've been meeting weekly for a number of hours throughout the piece. My gut tells me I think we're going to look at a Liberal majority, and if I had to guess a number, I'm going to say somewhere around 190, 191 seats.
How about you, Brody? Carrie's old and jaded, but maybe you're a little bit more optimistic and idealistic, sorry?
Well, I'd say Kerry's very wise in his prediction that he's got, but I'm going to go with a bit less than Kerry. I'm going to say that it's going to be a Liberal win, but I think it's going to be a Liberal minority government. I think with the looking at those early numbers, it's hard to tell again, but we are seeing a bit of Conservative gain, but I think still, that's not enough to push the Conservatives over the edge. It's going to be interesting to see if we are going to see that push or not, but I think that I would go as of, I'm going to say that it's going to be a Liberal minority, maybe 150, roughly around that region.
Yes, well, I think you guys are all very, very smart, but we actually have something to beat you in the predictions department. For thousands of years, prognosticators have claimed the ability to foresee future events. With so much riding on the federal election, we were thrilled to reveal a foolproof method of predicting the future. We now go to our correspondent in the field, Matt Schroeder.
Have you, much like everyone else, wanted a reliable source for the upcoming election? Who will win? Today, I have the answer to that question. I'm here with a dog that will be representing the Liberal Party, Daisy. Daisy, how do you feel about this upcoming race? Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing your performance. And I'm here with the dog that will be representing the Conservative Party, Bruno. Bruno, how do you feel about this upcoming race? And do you have any thoughts? And are you excited? Oh, talking to the mic, not me, buddy. Okay, thank you very much, Bruno. We look forward to seeing your performance. Good. And here we have the cat that's going to represent the NDP party, Pepper. Pepper, what are your thoughts on this upcoming race? And are you excited? Thank you very much, Pepper. We look forward to seeing your performance. Mark, get set, go! Go, 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 go! Oh my goodness, NDP is taking the lead with Conservative very close behind in second and Mark Carney in the Liberal Party. They're very last. Let's slow that down real quick. Look at how ready he is for this race. He came prepared. Now, for the Conservative and Liberal Party representatives, I can't say the same. They didn't come with the same passion. They didn't come prepared. They weren't ready to run like their lives depended on it. That's where I give Pepper his props. He really went out there and showed that the NDP can upset. Now, for the others, they are very upsetting, but in the wrong way. Okay, it's a blowout, not what we expected. Can't wait to see what happens next. This is your most reliable source for the upcoming election. Thank you very much. I'm Matthew Schroeder, Westman This Week. Brandon.
So, after seeing that, what do we think? Do we think this is accurate? Is the NDP coming up from behind? Is it like the cat? Thoughts?
Brody, you and I were both watching that closely. The part that concerns me is if you study the tape, it appears as though the cat may have been let loose just seconds prior to the dogs. If that's accurate, that suggests either a voter fraud or, and I'm not prepared to go this way, but is the fix in? I don't want to think that way, but maybe. Brody?
I know, I think that the methodological analysis of how this this electoral prediction method maybe is
Yes,
to
sir.
be questioned. But maybe we can maybe say, hey, you know what? Maybe this is the light at the end of the tunnel that the NDP were looking for. You know, maybe this is going to be the NDP orange wave sweeping across Canada. Could it happen? I think, you know, maybe, who knows? Jagmeet Singh, I think maybe if he's watching right now, I think, you know, hey, this is a very promising electoral thing that maybe I think your party could adopt to look at maybe future ways. Hey, how can we go about and look at ways we could get ridings and flip them to create this orange wave, get the cats out there, start going door knocking and get the cats involved. I think, you know, look at the race. I think the cats just show that, just springboards you right to the finish line. So.
I love where your head's at. It forces me to question whether or not, you know, I think for most of us, the dog is our favorite animal, but is the cat, you know, is the cat maybe our favorite animal, and we're not there yet in terms of our understanding. In any event,
Yeah.
back to you, I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm very glad that the pet predictions had made you kind of question your own predictions that you made earlier. But now we're going to take a moment to find out who's helping us put this thing on air.
You can't see them from where you are, but we've got dozens of people pushing things forward. Hey, Jen, I think you're going to give us a little tour.
Hello and welcome to WCG TV's 2025 election show. My name is Jennifer Klein and I'll be showing you what makes this election show run. So we're going to start in the production room back here. We have a mix of first years as well as second years, and starting with our second years, we have someone who makes the entire show run. We have Kenzie here, our director, and second-hand man Connor here, who will be switching. Moving to this back row, we have Daniel, who's also a second year. We have Kiana and Josh, who will be running the script and any videos that we'll be going through. And we have some very important people here, Mandy and Holly, who will be showing us, or giving our data to our results host. And then we have some more second years back here doing some audio and some fun stuff that will make the show go so well. Working very hard, making the show run very smooth. So, and then we also have some camera people back here. And then, of course, some lovely hosts and people that will be talking on our show today. So thank you so much for looking at our studio today, and I hope you enjoy the show. My name is Jennifer Klein.
Well, thank you, Jen, for giving that spotlight to our people behind the scenes. But we also have teams out there in the field. They're going to be at candidate headquarters and talking to the regular voters about how their night is going. Let's check in with the teams.
I'm Sofia Frolova. With me here behind the camera is Sarah Antonishan. As a part of our field production crew today, we will be on location in Brandon as the results of the election will be coming in from east to west. We will be here in the community asking the opinions and thoughts of Brandonites on the results coverage and also asking their concerns and hopes on this notable federal election.
Hello, I'm Stu Smoley. I'm here with Matt Schroeder, who is behind the scenes. We are in Portage La Prairie to cover the Portage-Lisgar riding in this federal election. We will bring you updates and candidate reactions to the voting results as the evening progresses. Please stay with us.
I'm Noel Yant. I'll be covering the Brandon-Souris riding. The three candidates are Grant Jackson, Conservative Party, Quinton Robinson, NDP, Gazav Laha, the Hawk, Liberal Party. This riding has been blue every federal election but one. I'll be on scene with the winning candidate once the results are announced. I'm Noel.
So now we're going to be taking, soon we're going to be taking a look at the 3 federal ridings in Westman in our next half hour. Right now, we're going to take a sec to talk about the inclusive youth vote.
The young people. What do they want? Why don't they vote? And how do we get them out to the polls?
Let's take a look at the piece by our reporter, Ashton Kalita.
I decided to go around Brandon University and ask students whether they think it's important that young people should vote, what sort of issues they think our next government should focus on, and if they will be voting based on who's running in their riding or who's running for prime minister.
I feel like young people really need to vote for the upcoming election because it really concerns our future, while older people might not care as much about climate change or the overall well-being of our earth, because it's not going to affect them as much because they're older. Well, it's going to have a really big impact on our life, and also with other policies, it's going to affect us more eventually than it's going to affect the older crowd.
I think that they should really be focusing on making Canada the best country it can be, making it as affordable as it can be, and standing up for what's right.
I mostly care about not getting Pierre Poilievre in office. I don't want him in office. So I think I'm going to vote for the most we can do to not have him in office. I think locally we'll have a guy that comes in that'll fix things up, right? Like, you know, that always works itself out, really. But I think it's important that, especially with Pierre's sort of parroting of Trump's remarks and Trump's policies, it'd be best to focus on the federal, because what happens in the federal will sort of filter down into the local, right? And I don't want to see that kind of rhetoric coming into Brandon.
So, Brody, you were recently on a panel that we did earlier about the youth. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think that on that panel we talked about, and the panelists that were with me, I think were really provided some great insights into a lot of the key election issues that have been taking place. But I think if I were to kind of hone in on an issue, again, I talked about it earlier, just kind of an echo point, looking at affordability. And I think a lot of the politicians have been not only just focusing on young people on this issue, but as a general issue, again, they've been really trying to hone in on how they're going to make life more affordable for Canadians. There's been a bit of a messaging, I think, about looking at middle class, but I think as a young person, and I know both of you can probably speak to this as well, I think that we need to find a way to help give young people a leg up. And I think that there has been policies, it wasn't the Mark Carney Liberals, but it was the Justin Trudeau Liberals, where they had that first home buyers account that you could put money into. So then a lot of the problem is you can't make that first down payment when you're like, we don't have 30 grand or 40 grand to just pull out and put on a home. So I think that's the problem, I think, is that the down payment is just too much for people to get that home. I think the mortgage payments, they're still very high, but I think that's the first problem that needs to be addressed, I think. And I think also the fact is that, you know, grocery prices are skyrocketing, price gouging is able to occur. Is there anything you think that I'm missing as young people that you feel is needing to be addressed and is an election issue, I think?
You know, I really agree with everything that you've been saying, and I know exactly how it feels, especially because I'm a 19-year-old college student, and I'm moving out finally. I've been, you know, in Brandon my whole life, and I've had the luxury of staying with my parents, but I'm moving out, and it's going to be so wild for me, and I'm already looking at the budgeting costs, and it seems out of reach. I only started looking at it this year, and it already seems so far out of reach for me, and it sucks because I was doing my budgeting and putting money in my savings account, you know, as people do around our age as well, and it felt like I already needed to start a housing saving fund, you know, because at this rate, for a lot of different people, I feel like, honestly, it's just not a possibility for us to even have a home in the future because of just the way, you know, bills have been, you know, racking up with grocery bills, rent, even tuition and housing everywhere across Canada. What about you, Kira?
Yes, I think everything that you said, Ryan, really did cover it. But it is time for us now to go to our friends at WCG-TV. Our pal Colin Shalik leads a group chatting about where the whole voting thing is going. We'll be back in 7 minutes. See you soon.
Welcome to the WCG-TV in-studio portion of tonight's election coverage. Today I'm with my good friend Cullen, my wonderful friend Emmy, and my name is Kevin, and we're going to give you some expanded coverage of the election. We're going to follow some ridings, some key ridings to see if they're bellwether ridings or not. We're also going to cover some social media that is in addition to ACC's coverage, and then we also have Cullen. He's going to investigate some secrets. He's got some surprises planned for us, don't you, Cullen?
Yeah, so I'll be sort of, over the course of the evening, I'll be sort of focusing on the Manitoba ridings, how everything's going, who's in the lead, who might win, and also looking kind of historically, you know. We have all these seats, how have they voted in the past, how will they vote tonight? It'll be pretty interesting to see.
I can't wait. What do you think, Emmy?
Well, for me, I think what I find interesting is kind of the psychology around this election. You know, there's a lot of factors that play, a lot of human factors. And so that's the part I find fascinating. And also, as a British Columbia native, it's pretty cool. I was reading a headline here that BC could become a battleground state between minority and majority or whatnot, which is pretty exciting because when you grew up in BC doing elections and watching elections, the polls are still open and the election's been called, right? So there's that feeling of like, you know, does our vote even matter? And I know it does, you know, for your particular riding, but for the country overall. So to see that this might come down to the West Coast having a part to play in the government is pretty exciting too.
So interesting. And this has been such a crazy build-up to this election. The polls have been wildly swinging in both directions, and now they seem to be settling back into, we have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah, pretty much, because for the last little while, and especially today, the Liberals have the lead in the polls. It's a narrow lead, but despite that narrow lead, I think everyone knows that it's going to be close, and you have to wonder, with how close it is, do we think we'll see a majority government? It's hard to say, because when you see an election being that close, that usually tends to indicate whoever's going to win is just going to barely win, and that usually tends to indicate minority government. And we've had a constant minority government since the 2019 election. So if we go on, 6 years and counting of a minority government, how would that make Canada's future look? If one party doesn't have the decisive control to enforce what they want to do.
True, and our last government was a perfect example of coalitions, right? A lot of coalitions really adds an extra dimension to politics in Canada. That's very interesting, and personally, as far as BC is concerned, I'm hoping it's razor right down the wire, that the last vote in BC is the one that decides it. That would be wonderful.
Well, that would be pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Yes. And do we know, has there been reports on the amount of people coming out to vote for this election? I know the early elections showed a lot of increased numbers, but how are we finding, is there any reports on election turnout today in particular?
I haven't seen anything personally, but I was thinking about that earlier today. Because of this election and the weight it seems to hold, how will we see the overall turnout percentage be? Because the highest turnout percentage we've had in an election since 2000 was a 68% turnout in 2015 when Justin Trudeau was first elected. My personal prediction, I think we might eclipse 70.
I've heard that advanced polls have already set records.
Yeah.
And if that continues, we may have a record turnout for this election, and those are all those extra voters. We don't know how they're going to vote, so this is going to be very exciting.
Because especially people who decide to stay home for elections, it's hard to really get what their political opinion is because they tend to be apolitical usually. So it could swing things wildly the other way.
That's why I'm watching these bellwether ridings and ridings that have historically only voted one way, and I'm going to see if there's any changes in those ridings. Unfortunately, we do have to wait for the riding.
We do.
We can't just sneak in there and find out. But I think this is the election to watch. I'm so glad everybody's joining us live streaming on WCG TV's YouTube page. It's a great time to just kind of be alive. I really like it.
Well, and just thinking about potentially record numbers of people coming out to vote, and it may be coming down to the wire in BC. So what do we think the reasons for that are? What are the main reasons that there is so much charge behind this election?
One of the reasons, in my opinion, I think we've seen this for a long time. And I think in elections, not even just in Canada, I think we see this in the United States as well. But I think a lot of it comes down to the urban versus rural divide. So the big population centers like your Calgary, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Vancouver, they have a lot of seats. And usually the rural seats, there are these big swaths of land, and usually it tends to end up being, especially in Manitoba's case, the amount of seats that you have between your big population center and then the rest of the province, they are pretty equal.
Right.
And typically, bigger population centers tend to be more progressive. So I think, for example, in the 2021 election, there was a big urban-rural divide in that Vancouver, Winnipeg, Toronto, they were about as red as you can get. But then outside of those population centers, it was as blue as you could get.
So is that in every province? We find that same pattern?
I think Alberta is one of the places where that's not the case typically, because
Right.
it is overwhelmingly conservative there. And I think you will get sometimes the odd Liberal or NDP seat in places like Calgary or Edmonton. But I don't think it's as much of a 50-50 as it is, for example, in BC
Yeah.
Or Manitoba. I think Saskatchewan too, also to a degree. Like they tend to be more like Alberta, where it's predominantly conservative. But yeah,
Right.
definitely BC, Toronto, Ontario,
Yeah.
Manitoba. I think that's where you see that more of that 50-50.
Right. Right.
And Newfoundland is another good example, and one I can draw upon right now because they do have some results in, but the entire island of Newfoundland has chosen conservative except one riding.
So is that historically normal for Newfoundland? Is that in line with their
I believe
norm?
it goes in line with what Cullen was saying, that urban votes different than rural, and I think Newfoundland is our
Is a good
first
example of that.
exact situation.
Yeah.
For sure. So we're starting to run a little thin on time. So I wondered if the last thing that we can talk about before we send it back to ACC is, do we want to do a little prediction? As as the as the results are kind of slowly starting to come in, what's your personal prediction? This is just for fun. What do you think it'll be?
And it's sad that we've been poisoned by looking at a little bit of early results already.
It's easy to sway
Yeah,
you,
we
yeah.
should have done this right off the bat. Anyways, I'm going to stick with my podcast prediction because it's a very controversial prediction, and I know it's wrong, but I don't care. I'm still going to stick with my earlier prediction of the Conservative majority because I already called it. Well,
Bold.
I don't have time
Bold.
to explain it right now, but we'll get into it as we go. How's
Okay,
that?
all
All right,
right.
stay tuned.
All right.
Okay.
do
Well,
you
I'm
think?
going to go on the opposite, and I'm going to call a Liberal majority.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah, I'll be the other bold.
And Cullen's
Yeah.
going to be Switzerland. Watch. You got 30 seconds.
No, given how close the polls were, I think it will still stay as it is. I think it's still going to be a Liberal minority. I think the Liberals might increase their overall seat amount by a little bit, but generally I think it'll stay a Liberal minority. But it'll be interesting, and so we hope that you stick with us, and we're going to be sending it back over to ACC, so we'll see you soon.
Stay tuned. It's going to be fun. Can't wait.
Nice to see you. We're back. Let's check in with the latest results. Our results reporter is Erica Brake. Erica?
Thanks, Kira. There's not too much more going on. The votes are still coming in, but we are getting a slightly clearer picture of the way things are going. So far, the Liberals have taken 15 seats. They are leading and elected in 22, though. Conservatives are leading and elected in 10 ridings, and they have actually managed to flip one from a Liberal seat from last year. So the ratio of wins is 15-5, which is pretty on par for the ratio from last year. But we will have to see where the results take us as the night continues. Thank you, Kira. All three leaders are running in competitive ridings. Pierre Poilievre has held the seat of the rural Carleton riding near Ottawa since 2015. Lots of speculation that he may lose his seat tonight. The riding had the most early voters of any riding in Canada. 90 people are running for the seat. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is in the political fight of his life. His party support is bleeding all over the Liberals. Not only do projections suggest the NDP might lose so many seats that they lose official party status, polls show that Singh is at risk of losing his own riding of Burnaby South. The riding was rejigged this year, and Singh could be in third place. Prime Minister Mark Carney has never been elected. He's now trying to win a seat in the federal Nepean riding near Ottawa. Since 2011, Nepean has been reliably Liberal and probably won't change tonight. It's worth noting that Carney's riding is right next door to his arch rival Pierre Poilievre. While we wait for significant results to come in, let's look at where things stood in 2021. Here's where things stood after the last federal election back in the old day of 2021. Pierre Trudeau, remember him? Now, here is the projection for the country based on polling from yesterday. There's movement for sure. Some last-minute polls showed tightening of the race to within the margin of error. That's where we are at the top of the hour. It's 30 minutes until the Big Kahuna. Polls close in Quebec, Ontario, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan.
Wow, hard times for the leaders. Poilievre and Singh are fighting to keep their jobs, not just as party leaders.
That's right, and I should mention that the Green Party's Elizabeth May is also in serious danger of losing her seat tonight, according to the polls. May has represented Saanich Gulf Islands since the 2011 federal election.
Well, thank you very much for this, Erica. We're going to take a quick break. Stay with us. There is lots more to come. Now 30 minutes until polls close across much of the country. If you're just joining us, we're here to follow the federal election until it's clear who will lead this country through one of its historic challenges. I'll just run through our guests here with me. On the desk is Brody Barr, president of the Brandon University Political Science Club, and political commentator host Carrie Oriette. Quebec, Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. The polls close at 8:30. After that, it won't be long until we start to know which party and which leader will be taking the helm of the power in the country.
Let me ask our panel, do you think it's accurate what many people say? That our national elections dedicated thousands of kilometers away in Quebec and Ontario?
We're seeing lots of anger from the West over a feeling of alienation. Alberta is again talking about separatism. Is the electoral power of Ontario and Quebec contributing to the feeling that we don't really have a say? What are your thoughts?
Go ahead, Brody.
Okay, yeah. I think that, that point does have, I think that there is some credence to that. I think that the unfortunate thing, I think, within the system is that there is a lot of, the population density within Ontario and Quebec in our first past the post system make it so that the seat concentration is already decided when Quebec and Ontario kind of get that seats. So I think there is some credence to that, but I think that's just the way that the system was built. I do agree with that point, though. That said, I think it's just because, unfortunately, Manitoba does not have the same population density that Ontario and that Quebec does, and the prairies kind of get caught under the rug in that because of that, the way the system's built. Carrie, I guess if you want to add.
I agree with you 100%. I think when you look at it and you say, well, Ontario and Quebec have a disproportionate amount of power in this, I think it's also fair to say, to your point, that they also have a disproportionate percentage of the population.
Yeah.
So when people talk about this concept of Western separatism, is it because we're frustrated that by the time the vote gets to the Manitoba-Ontario border that it's over? I think that frustrates, Westerners. Now, is there something that you can do about it? Should we be taking, the power of the vote away from people in other places and send it to Alberta or send it to Saskatchewan? I think that that's a very difficult question.
For sure.
Those are my thoughts.
Yes, thank you very much for your insight on those questions that we had for you. Now we're going to go to our hyper-local right now. We've got about a half hour before everything starts to go really crazy, so it is a good time to review the 3 Westman ridings. We will start with Brandon Souris. The NDP candidate, Quinton Robinson, is fairly well known and respected, a minister and environmentalist. He's trying to unseat Grant Jackson. Jackson has been parachuted in to replace Larry McGuire, who suddenly resigned. Does the NDP have any chance to push aside Jackson? Will some think that he's kind of a young snapper? Do we think that is true, as he is only 28?
You know, the fact of his age is accurate. My sense of this would be, and many, many years ago, Robert F. Kennedy, not the one who's head of the Health and Human Services in the United States, but he was the senator for New York, and he was running for office. And they said, well, you're new here to New York. And he said, well, if how long you've been in an area determines who you should vote for, then we should just find the oldest person in New York and vote for him. So I think it's a fair question. Does Grant bring the gravitas, to that position? I think he does. So as a result of that, I think the age might be a little bit of a sort of a false argument. But that being said, it's still an argument, and each of us get to vote the way that we vote based upon any number of things. But Brody, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I would just have to fundamentally agree with that point. I think the key to a healthy democracy is having, if we said, okay, I think that, the oldest people should get to run, how is that healthy for democracy when we're not having a fair diaspora of all ages, I think, within a legislature? So I think that's an important point. I think it's a relevant point to say, you can discredit someone for that. But I think in the system that we're in, I think it's healthy to have a wide variety of ages. We can have people that are young being involved in politics. We can have people of all stripes, because I think that'll help people not check out. I think if we have people of all ages, it helps people get engaged within the system. Otherwise, I think if you just have one kind of broad category of one people, I think that, can make it kind of tricky sometimes to get people to tune in and get people to, get involved and engaged in some way.
I think if you want to find a way to get youth engaged, and the youth vote's an elusive vote to capture at best. And I think, Kira, you were mentioning that earlier. The problem then is when you have a young person who's running and who is by any measure a very serious, individual. I think you have to, take a very hard look at that person and take the youth out of it and just say, let's think about platform. Let's think about the job we believe that person may have done in past, political positions, and we go from there.
For sure.
If I could raise a little bit of a point as well, is coming from somebody who just is a little bit more new to politics. I'm not as expert in the world yet. I'm still young, but I look for a lot of relatability, and I think that a lot of my peers do as well, just across Canada. And if you look at it at a broad way of looking at it, you see, Canada's a very diverse place, and if you can't have diversity within politics, then it kind of defeats the whole thing that we're almost promoting as well. And I think that there are a lot of intelligent young people out there, and it's obviously a valid argument to just consider age as a part of something that could alter sorry, I'm hard to find my words, but you know what I mean. But yeah, I think that having young people, it creates a lot of diversity, and I think that it makes it easier for younger people who are maybe struggling to find the motivation to vote to maybe get more involved with the politics. So I totally agree with you guys, and I totally get it.
Yes, thank you for that, Ryan. And I actually know that if Jackson is to be elected as the Member of Parliament, he would be the youngest one elected ever in Manitoba specifically.
Wow, that's true.
Anyways, we're actually going to now take a closer look at the Brandon Souris riding, and our reporters have prepared this story.
This is Brandon, Manitoba's second largest city, home to 51,000 people, and the economic hub of Western Manitoba. Headquarters of two major post-secondary institutions, Assiniboine College and Brandon University, together making up over 6,000 students. The largest employer is Maple Leaf Foods, Over 2,000 work here, but thousands more work in healthcare, business, big and small, in industries like chemicals and transportation. Brandon often elects NDP members to the provincial legislature. In the last provincial election 2 years ago, Quinton Robinson lost out on the provincial seat for Brandon West by only 100 votes.
For the last 30 years, I've been living in rural communities, and what I was doing there was being a United Church minister and a family counselor.
In this election, he's the NDP candidate for Parliament in Brandon-Souris, taking the values of the NDP government and reaching out to the people of Brandon.
For folks to really think during this election period, and when you go to put a check on the ballot, what party holds up the values that you treasure as part of Canada?
But Brandon City makes up just over half the huge Brandon-Souris riding. The rest is rural, people working or serving agriculture and small businesses. Grant Jackson is the Conservative candidate for the riding. He took over after long-standing MP Larry Maguire stepped down unexpectedly due to health reasons. Although considered young at age 28, Jackson has grown up with politics. His father was the mayor of Souris. Jackson was recently elected MLA at the provincial level for the riding of Spruce Woods.
It's a really tight-knit community here in Westman. Everybody knows everybody or is related to somebody from one of the small towns across the region, and I think we all really stick together.
Jackson is expected to be elected. This federal riding has been held by Conservative for 32 years. If Jackson is voted in, he would become the youngest serving MP to represent Brandon-Souris in the House of Commons.
People are concerned to walk around in downtown Brandon now, and that's not acceptable. We've got to bring that back to a place where people want to come and gather.
The Liberals last won the federal seat here in 1992. Gonzafar Allah Tahar is the Liberal candidate. He only found out a month earlier he had been accepted by the party to run. We tried to reach out to Tahar, but there was no response. To find out what the community of Brandon is thinking about the election, I went down and asked the people of Brandon about voting.
Really important, yeah. I mean, the strength of our democracy depends on people voting.
Oh, very important. I haven't missed it in years. You just do a lot of research. It takes a long time, but it's worth it. It's my country and it's worth it. Well, we're going to watch the debate in English tonight and just collecting information as we go along.
I just look at who has the most fiscally responsible agenda and an agenda that will make Canada competitive again on the world stage.
Basically, find out who they're sleeping with, who's going to be making the decisions behind the scene.
The riding is changing. Brandon is becoming more multicultural. The average age here is 36, 5 years younger than the national average. But here, analysts say it's probably not going to change. It's a historical trend of electing a Conservative member of Parliament. I'm Nolan Yance in Brandon.
So now that was our Brandon-Souris riding, and let's move now to the east to Portage-Lisgar riding. This has been a rock to the solid Conservative riding. Our reporters in the riding had a very difficult time getting a hold of anybody. It's like everybody has given up. It's just a Tory stronghold.
So how about this panel? Is the night that Portage-Lisgar goes rogue?
Okay, oh sorry, you may have a moment to discuss.
No. I was going to say I would doubt it. As we were talking about a little bit during that piece where you had mentioned, youth getting involved and the rest of it, and I thought that was a great point. Portage-Lisgar has a long history of being a rock-solid Conservative seat, to the point, actually, where it might have been one of those kinds of seats where the party of Maxime Bernier, played a role. In fact, that it might be arch-conservative. But I think tonight we're going to see that go Progressive Conservative, Conservative Party of Canada. That's showing my age. As I'm old and jaded, I understand. Brody?
No, I'd have to agree with that. I don't think there's going to be any rogueness taking place in Portage-Lisgar. I think this is a safe seat for the Conservatives, and I think Brendan Leslie is going to hang on to that seat. Well, and I would agree with your point about that PPC, Maxime Bernier, I believe, ran in Portage-Lisgar that 1 year in COVID. So I think that just shows that that's just the amount of right leaning that seat has, I think. Yeah, I would definitely agree with your point there.
Wilson.
Awesome.
Perfect. So now we have our reporters that were out there at Portage-Lisgar, and we're going to take a look at what they made.
Portage has the highest population per capita for voters. So today, we asked those local voters their thoughts on the upcoming election.
The Portage-Lisgar riding is part of the Western Manitoba region. It covers an area of just over 10,000 square kilometers. From the South Basin of Lake Manitoba to the U.S. border, it stretches westward to Swan Lake and eastward to the provincial capital of Winnipeg. Of the 95,000 people in this riding, there are 66,000 potential voters. The candidates that are fighting to represent this region include Janine Gibson of the Green Party of Canada, Robert Kreis of the Liberal Party, Kevin Larson of the People's Party, Brandon Leslie of the Conservative Party, and Lisa Tessier of the New Democratic Party.
We reached out to the candidates to hear what they had to say about the upcoming election. Unfortunately, we were not able to speak to any of them directly. We did, however, review each party's platform to gain a sense of the topics and promises each were making. The Conservative Portage-Lisgar representative, Brandon Leslie, promises to abolish what was the carbon tax, repeal gun bans, support more farmers, and make housing more affordable. Robert Kreis of the Liberal Party promises to strengthen middle class and economic growth, do more to increase climate action, and to ensure that infrastructure projects meet accessibility benchmarks. Lisa Tessier of the New Democratic Party promises to help reduce carbon emissions to under 30%, banning the use of replacement workers on strike, and implement a better universal health care for lower-income Canadians.
With all these promises in mind, we asked locals what they look for in a candidate in the upcoming election.
I definitely support Poilievre's idea for not bringing in more people than we have homes. I think his policies for finding a dollar for every dollar that you spend, I think those are great ideas.
Like if the candidate has a platform that, a platform where there's fiscal responsibility, that's huge for me, and I don't see that with a lot of the candidates that we have right now.
With promises, no one does it better than young people. So we asked locals what they thought the impact young voters have on this election.
Young voters are going to be the future. They are the ones that are going to learn about how the process actually works and make a difference in the long term in terms of who's going to running our country.
I feel like if we really want to change the landscape of the future, not only for the economic, but for the housing development and everything like that, young voters will change the future. Because if we act now, then we will save our future.
So Matthew, those are some of the concerns the people of Portage-La Prairie have in this Portage-Lisgar riding concerning the upcoming election. It's time to vote.
Stu, I don't know about you, but it's my first time voting, and I sure am excited to vote. So everyone, go out, go vote.
I'm Stu Smoley.
I'm Matthew Schroeder. Westman This Week, Portage-La Prairie.
To interrupt our Westman ridings and go quickly to Erica. Erica, I heard you have some information for us. Can you please enlighten us?
Kira, I do. So not too much has changed over in the Atlantic ridings. Conservatives have so far only picked up one extra seat, totaling them at 6. They are leading and elected in 10 ridings, with the Liberals leading and elected in 24, having won 19 of those. So it does appear that they are on track for a similar distribution of last year's 8 to 24 for the Liberals. But we will keep checking back in as the results continue to come in. Thanks, Kira.
Thank you so much for that, Erica. We really appreciate the update that you have given us. And right away, we are going to have another short break about to go back to Westman for that 7-minute break. And we're going to go back to WCG with Colum Shalik with the update about what is going on with the voters.
Is that thing not supposed to be moving?
No, I was making.
Welcome back to WCG TV Studios. I'm here with Kevin and Cullen, and I am Emmy. And so we're just watching away here as the elections go. And Kevin, something I know you were really interested in during this election was changes. So like ridings that maybe historically voted Conservative or Liberal having a flip. And so far, are you seeing anything like that in what you're watching?
Well, Emmy, it's getting really exciting here. I'm looking at a lot of ridings that are just voting the same way they've always voted. The only standout is Mount Royal in Quebec. I really wanted to see what they were going to do because they've consistently been Liberal voters.
Yeah.
And I can report that they are still consistently Liberal voters, so there's no big swings politically in Quebec that I'm noticing yet.
Right.
So a lot of the Bloc ridings are still voting Bloc, and a lot of the Liberal ridings are still voting Liberal. I thought it was going to be, you know, a little bit more controversial than that because of all of the turmoil that's going on.
Yeah.
Turns out Quebec is happy with the status quo.
Status quo.
Yeah.
So you were hoping some fireworks.
I was
and
hoping for a little more.
So far, it's a little like
A little more boom boom.
That's okay. That's okay. Hey, you know what? The night is young.
That's true.
We still got
Very
Ontario, and maybe BC will do something
BC will
exciting.
come through in the end.
Who knows? We'll try. We'll hope for some excitement. So, and another thing we were discussing while Assiniboine College was doing a great job there is the difference in, so I'm showing 22 seats to Liberal to 10 to Conservative. So over double the seats, but the actual popular vote isn't that different, Colin. So tell us a bit about that, like that seat discrepancy versus the popular vote and what that looks like this election.
Yeah. Well, like in many elections, a party can win an election, but they might lose the popular vote. And we have seen this, and if you weren't paying attention or you may not remember, in 2019 and in 2021, the Conservatives won the popular vote, but they lost the election both times. Now, it wasn't a huge gap in the popular vote, but as we sit right now, I think, again, just doing some math on the fly here, I believe the Liberals have just under a 70,000 vote lead.
Yeah.
But yet they have double the amount of seats. So that it is interesting, you know, like you have to wonder if the Liberals win, will they capture the popular vote? Will they not? It'll be interesting.
And I guess at the end of the day, that popular vote doesn't really mean anything.
Doesn't mean a whole lot because again, it's the seats that counts. It's not.
And it always spawns the internal argument of should we use a popular vote system or a riding system, and we'll never get to the bottom of that. But I think it also explains or tries to explain that rural-urban divide, right? But depending on where your populations are, it's easy for small urban centers to kind of take control over large rural centers, even though they don't have the population, but they do have the ridings.
They have that seat.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one thing I will add, because in our first block we talked about kind of that urban-rural divide, and as of right now, as the live results are coming in Newfoundland, Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick, the provincial capitals are all Liberal. So again, talking more about that urban-rural divide, the major population centers are Liberal as we speak, and of course the more rural areas are Conservative. So more of the same, but yeah. So far, you know, I don't have an exact confirmation of if whether or not these big population centers, if the Liberals are leading or if it's been certified that they've won the seats. But it seems like the Conservative strategy of hoping to try and kind of break into these urban areas, it's not going well so far. We will see what happens maybe once we get into Montreal, into Toronto, to Ottawa, but so far not so good for them in that regard.
Okay.
It's very interesting that we're joined today by Emmy because you have some rural experience and some recent urban experience, and I'm curious, have you noticed a difference between, you know, it's such a general question that it's almost silly to ask, but I'd like to hear your opinion of how rural and urban populations, you know, how different are they?
Oh, geez. Okay, well, I would say, you put me on the spot here, I would say from my experience, which is not scientific, so don't, you know, base anything off it, but I found living in urban centers, so I'm kind of like an urban sandwich. I spent 20 years in an urban center, then I spent 20 years in a rural center, and now I'm back to urban. And I found in rural, there was a lot less conversation. It was very blanket, you know, it seemed very kind of like, you know, and you can look at the historical votes for the riding I was in was very much a blue riding, and everybody voted blue, and that was the end of the conversation. So there wasn't quite the debate or, you know.
And if you didn't, you got shot.
No, I don't know about that, but I would say if you didn't, you just maybe didn't say anything. Right? So there was maybe that kind of a little bit more conservative or old-fashioned values or, you know, and so definitely coming back to urban I see the difference in opinions and ideas, and
I
but
love-
that is very generalizing.
Yeah.
So,
And I love how you generalized it so well, because, you know, finding out what separates urban voters from rural voters would probably be very enlightening for political parties to try and figure out, you know, how to appeal to the side that they may be underrepresented in.
Maybe, and maybe there's, you know, like for me, you know, like I said, my interest in this is kind of the psychology, and in a rural center, you might just have more, this is how my family's always voted, or this is how my neighborhood has always voted. You have, like, you know, families that have lived there for generations, so things are a little bit more, you know, I don't know, the right word, like solid and ingrained, right? You know, where you come to maybe an urban center, there's maybe a little bit more shake up in that, a little bit more change and dynamics and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm sure they've done studies. I'm sure they've researched this.
Somebody, somewhere.
We'll Google really quick when Assiniboine College
Yeah.
takes back over, and
We're
we'll see
on
what
it.
we can learn. We'll
Yeah,
ask
for sure.
ChatGTP.
Yeah. And with the little time we have left, I was able to check if how all the ridings went in the major population centers. All of the provincial capitals, the riding has been certified. So the Liberals have certified one every single provincial capital so far.
You're kidding.
So that's pretty crazy.
Across the whole country.
Sorry, no, just in in Atlantic Canada. So
In Atlantic
St.
Canada.
John's, Charlottetown, Fredericton, and Halifax have all been certified as Liberal. So far, Atlantic Canada, those major urban centers, they are going Liberal. So we will see what happens.
Yeah.
But for
Love
now,
to
we are
figure
going to be
that out.
throwing it back to the ACC studios. So we hope to see you again soon.
Good times. That's going to just be a crazy night. Can't wait.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. I hope you're enjoying the show. This TV stuff is very stressful. Brody Burr, not Barr, is taking a quick break, and we are joined now by Rick Baker, a professor of political science at Brandon University. Rick is also a specialist in U.S.-Canada politics in particular. Rick, welcome. It's great to have you with us.
Thanks very much. It's really great to be here.
Rick, you've been called Rick Baker, the touchdown maker. And I've heard you called Rick Baker Heartbreaker. Can you clear it up for once, our audience, for once and for all here?
You know, why does it have to be just one or the other? Why can I not both break hearts and, score the touchdowns? I'm a man of many talents.
You know what, I agree with that. I think that's smart. You can have numerous nicknames.
There
I
we
think
go.
that you should be known by everything if you feel confident in it.
Yes, you should be known as many ways possible.
Absolutely.
Speaking of being known, it is only minutes until polls close across much of Canada, and an hour from now we'll probably know who our leaders will be. Let's wrap up our look at the Westman ridings. We go up north to the last regional riding, Riding Mountain. This is a newly changed riding. In the last election, it was Dauphin-Swan River. And just like your other Westman ridings, this is a seat that has long been true blue. Let's take a look at the story prepared by our reporters.
Located north of Brandon, the Riding Mountain electoral district is the second largest in the province. It includes distant communities of Dauphin, Swan River, Minnedosa, Westlake Gladstone, and Neepawa. The riding has a population of just under 91,000 according to the 2021 census. According to the Elections Canada, the voter turnout in 2023 reached 57%. It has a 65% of European population and a 28% Indigenous population. The riding was created in 2013 and was known as Dauphin Swan River Neepawa. Following a boundary redistribution in 2022, it was renamed Riding Mountain. The Conservative Party has held the riding since its creation. There will be 5 candidates representing the major parties at the election. Terry Hayward for the Liberals, Dan Messier, the incumbent MP for the Conservative Party of Canada, Andrew Douglas Maxwell for the NDP, Jim Oliver for the People's Party of Canada, and Liz Clayton for the Greens. Only 2 candidates responded to the request for an interview. They were asked questions on a variety of issues.
I don't know how to stop the polarization. We had it, and we've seen it even develop further with the rise in other parties like the People's Party of Canada. I feel is very disruptive in the way they view Canada, and is looking for unity. We are being challenged by foreign forces right now, the United States, China with its tariffs on our agricultural products. And as Prime Minister Carney has said, we need to come together. We need to come together to work for the betterment of Canada.
Reducing immigration was one of his big talking points. He recognized at that time the trajectory that the country was on as far as mass immigration being really lax with temporary workers and international students. And we don't do a lot to manage and maintain that body of immigrants. It isn't that we don't like immigrants, but we need to be more selective about who we permit and be more responsible about the people who do come here. So once they're here, if they are not offering any significant benefit to our nation and they're costing us money, they are reducing the available amount of housing, and they're basically exhausting our social resources, then we don't really need them.
There is a commitment by the Liberal Party of Canada, by the leader of the party, that we would hold immigration levels to 5% of the Canadian population. That is down from the high of 7.5% that we've had recently. Not a party that is talking of stopping immigration. We are a party of saying, let's control the numbers, and that's of temporary workers and international students. So 5% is the figure that we are proposing to the Canadian public to deal with what some people say is the immigrant problem. And I don't see it as a problem. It's a situation.
The Conservatives talking, and even the Liberals talking about investing billions and billions of dollars in building 500,000 new houses next year. But they're not addressing the root issue, which is the excessive amount of immigration that we have. We don't have enough houses for all the newcomers, and it puts a lot of pressure on the market. And so all of a sudden, houses are 2 or 3 times as expensive as they were when I bought my first house.
Into almost a post-Second World War build scenario, where we build affordable housing at the rate of 500,000 homes per year. When students get out of secondary school, some are wondering where they're going to go. And the trades are one place for them. There's going to be a huge need for growth in the, I'll call it the trades industry. We are going to be building. This is an election that I believe is one where people have to vote for the country, not the party.
So now that we've seen all 3 ridings, let's talk about Westman for a few minutes. Is it good for a party to have a lock over an entire region? Thoughts?
Rick, what do you think?
Well, I think it depends who you're talking to. If I'm the party, yeah, it's a great thing to have. But voters need to have an opportunity to have their sort of the fullness of the riding represented. And so if there's a situation where there's a consistent ideological flavor, who are we to say that they shouldn't continue to re-elect that same party? I mean, if that's what the voters want, isn't that what we should be doing?
Okay, so I'm going to ask you this question. I always struggled with this. So let's say, for example, then that we have a Liberal government wins federally, and we have, for example, either a Conservative or an NDP win here in Brandon-Souris. Are they going to punish us, or are they going to try and in a roundabout way? I don't like the word bribe, but it's the first one that comes to mind with various federal projects.
Right.
What are your thoughts?
I think that's exactly what's going to happen, right? If you think that you have an entry, or if you have the ability to get a little bit more out of them, I think that's exactly what you're going to do. Is you're going to look for those political parties to sort of help bring let the cash rain down.
Okay, interesting. And I like your point though, which is to say, people get to vote however they wish to vote, and at the end of the day, whether you're in an I think Saskatchewan doesn't have anyone other than Conservatives representing all 14 ridings.
Yeah.
And should we blame the individual voters of Saskatchewan because that's where they believe their interests are best represented? I struggle with that one. But,
Yep.
I don't know. What do you think, Kara?
What do I think about it? I think that when we take something and it's usually the same, it doesn't give an opportunity for like seeing how things are ran differently, because when we take things very one-sided, we're not learning other people's sides to the story. We don't learn we're not going to be listening to what are the Liberals saying, what are they giving us. Like, they just kind of throw it away because your parents, they taught you this is the way we vote. If you don't vote this way, that you might get kicked to the curb. I know one of my friends, when they went to go vote, their parent was like, I'm not giving you a ride because you're not voting the way I want you to vote. So I think that when things happen like that, I just wish that people were more open-minded when going into things and knowing that everyone has different opinions and you have to know what all the differences are before you decide if you're going to go to your straight A, like blue, blue, blue.
I think that's absolutely perfect, and people need to keep an open mind, right? I mean, so even if a riding has returned the same party over and over and over again, that doesn't mean that you just close off your brain, right? You have to be intentional about this.
I think that, in a way, it's really hard to break the norms when situations like that occur in any case. And I think that perspective is really one of the most important keys to life, in my personal opinion. And I think that, when I go about my daily life, I try and picture everybody's point of view. And it's hard when you're, stuck in a situation where everybody believes the same thing because it's just been passed down generation to generation. And it's hard to break out of that norm. And that's why, that's where a lot of things stem from, where it's really hard to break out of that, and there's movements, and sometimes it's easier to have more balance because you're more knowledgeable about everybody's perspective, and it's easier to make your own personal decisions. And I think that's something that's really valued these days, as well as your own individualism.
Now, one of you asked a question when we were on break, and I thought it was great, and we should take advantage of Rick being here, where you asked, what can other parties try and do to get a foothold in Westmount, given that it is such a conservative area? So, Rick, what do you think?
What can other parties do to try to get a? Well, they have to be more forthcoming with their platform, right? They need to find issues that can speak to the people of a particular region, and that's not always the case. Sometimes there's those policy prescriptions coming down from on high, and that doesn't have much to do with the people on the ground in the ridings. And so, I think we need to have sort of that opportunity for people to see a variety of perspectives.
Now, I know that Ryan really got us all going there with our questioning, but we have to go over to Erica, because Erica has something that she really, really wants us to hear. So Erica, what is it that you need to tell us that is going on?
Thanks, Kira. Yes, so there haven't been any new results in the Atlantic region. We are still sitting at 19 seats for the Liberals and 6 for the Conservatives. I think it's safe to say that we are currently in the calm before the storm that will be 8:30 and on once all the polls have officially closed. So I should point out here that sometimes the graphics we show don't match what I might say. That's because I'm getting updates from several sources. The updates on the graphic might be just a minute older than my information. So let's take a look. As you can see, the Conservatives are still leading and elected in 10 ridings, Liberals still leading and elected in 22, and as I mentioned, they have won in 19. Conservatives have won in 6, and interestingly, they have managed to flip one seat from the Liberals to the Conservatives. But as of this moment, that is the only update we have. So, Kira, back to you.
Thank you very much, Erica, for that insight. It is very interesting that we saw that flip happen in a place that we didn't really see there to be a flip. So, do we think that means anything to see that one flip happening? Does that mean we're going to see more of these, or is it just that one? Is it too early?
Go ahead, Rick.
Well, I mean, from my perspective, just one change it doesn't really say a whole lot yet. Is it a harbinger of what's about to come? Maybe, but I think it's a little too early for us to.
I think one of the things I always struggle with is Is there something happening in that particular riding in the middle of Newfoundland that we don't know about that might be specific to that riding? Or is it indicative of, as you ask, and that's a very insightful question, is it indicative of a bigger trend or something that we should be looking for? We don't know, unless you may know the ridings. Hearing you earlier, you and Brody were talking, you're listing off the ridings left, right, and center. It was like an encyclopedic knowledge of Canadian politics, and I was glad to be part of it. But it jumped out at me, that question of, are you seeing anything yet?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I think it's a really good question because, again, sometimes the politics of the day within a riding, they can overwhelm the federal battle that's going on. Okay. So yeah.
So now that we are again in this quiet before the storm, the polls in Ontario are closed, but we won't have results for a few minutes yet. Counting takes a lot of time. So let me tell you about exactly how counting works. There are votes that are counted by hand at each of the polling stations. This includes the little tiny ones on islands with just a few dozen voters, up to cities with thousands of voters. Once that counting is done, the report goes out and directly to the public. The results are considered preliminary, but with saying that, counting always happens, and it's very interesting to see that we rely on people to volunteer at elections and be there to man the polls. And now we are going to see what's going on nationally. So these are our national results so far for the leading and elected. I want to ask you guys, what do you think about the numbers down there so far?
It's pretty early. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to read the tea leaves out of just those results.
Yes, well, you know, that's how it is. It is like that. It's very hard for us to see how it is before we get to the big picture. And I just wanted to ask you, Rick, Donald Trump has been a huge influence on the election overall because we are wanting to find someone that is able to defend our country against it. What are your thoughts on that?
What are my thoughts on that? Wow. Yeah, Donald Trump has loomed really large in our election, hasn't he? I think what Donald Trump has done is he has managed to narrow this entire election down into this notion of what it means to be a Canadian. And you know, I'm not going to call it his interference in our election, but his engagement, the way he spouts off, it renewed a sense of Canadian patriotism and pride. And the Liberal Party under Mark Carney has been able to ride that wave and has been able to really take advantage of that. And he's been able to sort of try to equate Pierre Poilievre with Trump and try to use some of the same rhetorical tricks that they use, and they've really been able to ride that wave.
So I have a question for you, and I've been watching this, and I've been struggling to understand it. So thank goodness that we have you here. Why has Poilievre sort of been slow to pick up on this? Yeah, and you mentioned quite insightfully that Carney grabbed it very quickly. Why didn't Poilievre grab it so quickly?
It's a great question, isn't it? I think the problem is that so much of it takes too much of a pivot.
Okay.
Because so much of his much of his rhetoric was about understanding the problems of Canada and the things that he needed to change, and then how can that run against the notion of Canadian pride? Yeah, so I think that's part of the problem for Poilievre in this whole situation.
Interesting. Thank you very much.
So I want to talk about defense a little bit. Do we need to worry about being attacked from our neighbors in America? Do we need to have a plan? And what parties have those kind of things in set for us if we were to be attacked?
Isn't that a terrible thing that we're even having this conversation? So I don't think we have to worry about being attacked, but I think that we have, well, no, we are under attack. Right, the tariffs that Donald Trump has launched is a form of an attack, and I think that if we don't take Trump at his word when he talks about how he wants Canada to be a 51st state, I think that's dangerous. I think we have to understand that there is seriousness in the things that he is saying. And it's not just Canada, right? When he talks about Greenland and he talks about where else? Where else is he?
Well, he's
Panama.
talking about Panama.
I think there's a real problem if we don't take this seriously enough. And you can see why people wouldn't. It sounds like it's just over the top rhetoric. Of course, this is just absurd. It's silly. He doesn't really mean this. You know, there are enough people that have been orbiting his political movement. This is exactly the sort of thing that they want.
So do you think that going into this vote that Canadians should be voting based on the fear that they feel about the neighbors down there?
Wow, that is an amazing question. I mean, my own instinct is to never vote out of fear. Other people aren't necessarily going to go by that, but I don't think that Canadians necessarily have been voting out of fear. I think that the trend has been about the opposite. It's about taking pride in Canada, and it's about wanting to show our patriotism. And so that's not about fear, right? That's about hope in a way.
And Carrie, do you have anything to add about that and like the feeling? What do you think voters are feeling when they're going to vote and they know what's happening and they know what Trump has been saying about Canada?
I think that Rick is spot on when he talks about this wave of patriotism that Americans have always been rather jingoistic. The sort of this loud, noisy patriotism that Canadians really, by and large, have never been. If you were to think about the most patriotic moments in Canadian history, as someone who's old, if not jaded, I keep going back to this. Ryan, you called me it. I'm sorry. 1972, when Canada won the Canada Cup,
yes.
of course, but when Ben Johnson, the day that he won the Olympic, the 100-meter dash in the Seoul Olympics, and of course the last time that a Canadian team won the Stanley Cup, I believe it was my beloved Montreal Canadiens, but I'm not going to go to that point. I think it's there. I don't believe, as per Rick's point, that we have to worry about an invasion per se, but there is an economic war to a certain degree that's occurring right now, and that's what the threat of and the actual carry-through of tariffs is all about. It's about attempting to force us to do things in a particular way. So, war is, I think it was von Clausewitz who said that war is politics by other means. Mm-hmm. And they're attempting to use politics to force us to, to bow to them. So that's my thought for what it's worth.
So Ryan, I just wanted to know, when you went to go vote, were these thoughts in your mind about Canada being the 51st state? Was that something that you were thinking about going into there, especially as a first-time voter, to cast your ballot?
It's definitely something that I've considered and thought about a lot in my past time and just in general during discussions with my friends, family, colleagues, anything. But when I was going into vote, I knew that I just wanted to vote true to my heart. And that's kind of how I feel like it should be. Everybody has a voice and everybody has the right to use it. And that's what I believe and that's what I did. And yeah, I agree with Rick in the sense that I don't believe that I should be, voting out of fear. But at the same time, I kind of question, I mentioned earlier, obviously, I'm new to politics. I'm still, I am a first-time voter, but it feels almost as though it has a new arc. Like, the politics are changing. It feels like the world is changing so much that this election is almost just like nothing we've seen before. And I feel as though that's...
Sorry, I'm so sorry, Ryan. I
Oh,
love to
that's
hear you
okay.
talk, but our friend
yapper.
Colin really wants to see us. We have to go to WCG and see what Colin has been chatting about and where the vote has been going to.
Okay, so we are back here at WCG TV studios. My name is Emmy, of course, and here we are with Kevin and Cullen. Thank you, Assiniboine College. You're doing a great job over there. So here we are. We're starting to see more results coming in. My black and white map is getting a little bit more colorful. So, and as I'm watching it, I'm thinking when we made our predictions before, we should have put something on the line there. I might have won something like a Happy Meal or something like that. I should have made it interesting, but that's okay.
Everyone loves a Happy Meal.
Yeah, you can't go back in time.
Can't go wrong with a ribwitch.
Maybe next year. So we're starting to see the results moving westward, of course. Quebec. This is an interesting one to me. So we have, an additional party in Quebec. So it's, a little bit more of a rainbow there. So Colin, you're pretty knowledgeable about Quebec and all that stuff. What's the impact there? Are we seeing any surprises? Is it going the way that was maybe predicted? Is there any trends or changes we're seeing in Quebec here?
Well, I think it's kind of interesting. So far, as we currently sit right now, the Bloc Québécois, they have not officially won any seats, but they are leading in 10 of them. And what I'm just thinking of is, with everything that's kind of on the line with this election, how it seems to me there's a lot of support being flocked to with the Liberals, especially amongst progressive voters, which you do see, I think, a very high abundance of progressive voters in Quebec. I'm just thinking, how will the Bloc fare? I won't make a prediction per se, but I just wonder, will their seat numbers go up? Will they go down? It's hard to say, because in 2021, they won 32 seats, and but in the 2021 election, there was no change in the seats. They didn't go up or they didn't go down. But in 2019, they went from 22 to 32. So they did go up. So I just find it just interesting what will happen. But another thing, and Kevin, we talked about this on one of our roundtable episodes, but historically, and you might not have read into this or have known, but historically, MPs, or I should say the leader of the Liberal Party, a leader of the Liberal Party that wasn't born in Quebec or doesn't have a French background has historically not done that well. And this is interesting because Mark Carney is from the Northwest Territories, and there was some controversy on his French-speaking ability. Because from what I've kind of seen, it's not the best. Like, he knows kind of the bare minimum.
He can read.
He can read and write in French very basically, but if you kind of look at it between like the Bloc Québécois leader or Poilievre, it's not that good. And of course, being able to have both that French and English connection, I mean, that's kind of mandatory, really. I mean, there are some MPs in the House of Commons that were kind of scrutinized because of their lack of French. And I say all this to really say the Liberal Party really heavily relies on Quebec, and specifically Montreal. So I think there's just a lot of things at play with, yes, there are a lot of people flocking to the Liberal Party from this election because of progressive voters. Will that influence, like whether or not the Bloc loses seats or gains seats? But because of Mark Carney and his lack of his French background, will that also have an impact? So it'll be kind of interesting just to see what happens. And again, I mean, as the results are coming in, we are seeing the Liberals leading in some areas. We see the Bloc leading in some areas. So, well, we'll have to see. And I just have some other kind of numbers here just to show, kind of help illustrate my point of the lack of success for the Liberal Party when they don't have a French candidate. Now, there are some anomalies in here, but one thing I will say, so in all three elections that Justin Trudeau was in, of course, he won all three of those elections, but in all three of those elections, the Liberals won a majority of the seats in Quebec. Now, even though Justin Trudeau was born in Ottawa, his father, Pierre Trudeau, there's French. They are French, as French as you can get. In 2011, Michael Ignatieff, he was the Liberal Party leader, and he was from Toronto. And we kind of remember from 2011, the Liberals had an embarrassing defeat because the NDP took second place. And I think I'll kind of keep it to that because we don't have a whole lot of time. I can go back and back, but
stay tuned.
But the lack of a French background can sometimes hurt the Liberals' chances in Quebec, and in an election where every seat especially really matters, you have to wonder, will that influence things?
And so if I'm understanding you right, you're saying, here's the block seats, and it could maybe go down for people swinging their vote to the Liberal kind of as like a conservative block vote, like they're voting against or it could maybe go up because of the Liberal candidate doesn't speak good French, basically. Like there's like
it could swing,
there's many ways that
absolutely.
it could swing.
It could swing either way in that regard. I'll say my personal prediction. I think it'll be more so. I think the Liberal support will maintain or go up.
Okay.
I don't think Mark Carney's lack of French background will tank things enough because he is, at this point, he is pretty popular.
Right.
So I don't think it'll be a case of it'll hurt the Liberals, but I don't think it'll be a huge net positive either.
So it might just average out.
Probably.
Do you want to bet a Happy Meal on it?
I'll get back to
you. or a kids meal of your choice.
Yeah.
So Kevin, thank you for that. That's a lot of knowledge. Kevin, you are scouring the internet far and wide trying to find a surprise, an overturn, an underdog win, something. Anything yet? Have we found anything surprising yet?
Spark of life in this election. Well, I do have some news.
Okay.
It's not that big, but it's pretty interesting if you're an NDP MP for the riding of Churchill. It seems to be going in a bit of an upset direction. It's still too close to call, of course, but the interesting fact is that the Liberals are actually jumping out to a pretty decent lead.
So is Churchill historically conservative?
Churchill is historically NDP.
NDP.
Yeah.
And you're saying the Liberals are in the
making
lead
a
right
good
now.
showing of it.
So
that's not good for NDP.
That's a riding to watch.
That's a riding to
Churchill
watch, yeah.
with the polar bears.
And then we have a couple seconds left just to talk about Winnipeg South, another interesting riding because they pretend to predict the winners, and in this case they're predicting a Liberal, I think, majority. Actually. And that's Winnipeg South. They're uncanny in their ability to predict the winner.
So Emmy and Winnipeg South predicting Liberal majority.
Yeah.
Okay.
You and all your friends are Winnipeg South.
So we will see.
All right, we'll be throwing it back over to the studios at ACC, so we hope to see you again soon.
Okay, so we are back from Westman Communications Group, and I'm here. My name is Kira Stephens. I'm joined with Ryan DeGroot, Carrie Oriat, and then Rick Baker. And right now, Erica has some news that she wants to share with us about what's going on in the numbers world over there. Erica, what do you got to tell us?
Thanks, Kira. So far, for the Liberals, we are looking at leading and elected in 84 ridings, Conservatives leading and elected in 54, the Bloc Québécois is leading and elected in 12, and the NDP is only leading and elected in 1 riding so far. So this is looking fairly, I think, what early polls were suggesting, where the Liberals were going to have the government, but it was going to be minority, as I believe some of our panelists had also believed we would be seeing. So we are, I believe, if I'm hearing right, going to take a look at the Westman ridings now. So as you can see, Grant Jackson is leading with 47 votes. The Liberals, sorry, not 47 votes, leading and elected 47% of the vote. The Liberal candidate has 28% of the vote, and our NDP candidate has 26% of the vote. This is about what is to be expected in Brandon-Souris. We are notoriously a conservative riding. It is very interesting to see just how split the vote has been on the left side of the aisle between the Liberals and the NDP. Now, for you, we have the riding Mountain District. Leading and elected, of course, with majority of the vote is the Conservatives. Liberals, about half of the vote behind them. NDP, only 429. The Green, as expected, not very high. The People's Party of Canada, also not very high up there in the polls. This is, of course, not a shock. Portage-Lisgar, same thing. We have the Conservatives, half the vote, and then the rest of the vote on the left being split by the Liberals, the NDP, and the Green Party. Again, nothing really unexpected here in any of these 3 Westman ridings. But we will keep an eye on all of these votes and the national votes and let you know when they have for sure been called. Back to you, Kira.
Thank you very much for that update, Erica. And I just want to talk about how a few days ago we recorded a panel with some local defense experts. Let's take a look at what they discussed.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. My name is Stu Smoley. Among the big issues that have come up during the federal election campaign, the future direction of the Canadian Armed Forces. Ultimately, it's about the defense of Canada itself. U.S. President Donald Trump has thrown a proverbial wrench into the world order established after the Second World War. What everyone believed was a friendly and stable defense relationship between the two neighbors now seems at risk of completely coming apart. For the first time in decades, Canada's military is facing the prospect of losing its most important ally. How much will we need to spend to protect ourselves? How much are Canadians willing to spend? What kind of weapons will we need to protect ourselves? I'm a retired major from the Canadian Forces. I spent 35 years in the artillery. With me here is retired Major Darren Kenny. Darren served a full career in the Canadian Forces, also as an artillery officer. He commanded a recruiting center and is a graduate of the Army Technical Staff Officer course, specializing in military equipment capabilities and purchases. Also joining me is retired Captain Chris Hunt. Chris served nearly 20 years in the Army Reserve. He holds a master's degree in political studies, a bachelor's degree in political science and sociology, and currently teaches international relations and strategic studies here in Brandon. And finally, retired Sergeant Kevin Spooner spent 30 years in the Royal Canadian Air Force. He was stationed at bases throughout Canada and spent a lot of his time working on F-18s. Gentlemen, welcome. I'd like to start with the commitment that Canada spend 2% of its GDP on defense per suggested NATO guidelines. Currently, Canada spends 1.37%. President Trump now says the U.S. won't come to the aid of any country that has not met the 2% target. Trump also says he wants all NATO countries to be more than double amount to 5% of the GDP. It was just 2 years ago the Liberal government announced it was cutting the armed forces and defense funding by nearly $1.7 billion. Now the Liberals promise we'll get to 2% GDP by the year 2032. The first question, is Canada delinquent in its obligations? I'll start with you, Chris. Can we, as a country, get there? Is Trump right in making this demand?
Well, I think first of all, we're going to say is any Canadian government would have done that in the past, and we've seen that with both Liberal and Conservative governments, chronically what we would call underinvesting, but really cashing in like a lot of other European and our fellow Democratic allies have done, spending what they can to have some capabilities that plugs into the security the U.S. provides. And as a result, we've been able to enjoy prosperity, health care, lots of services by not spending on defense.
I think President Trump is actually correct. He's just telling us to commit to something we've already agreed to. We agreed to spend 2%. Is it a figure that's outrageous? No. If you look at the state of our forces now, there has to be some improvement, and that's going to come with increased funding. I also want to say, although we're at the bottom of the list of overall percentage-wise, if you look at the total amount of money spent, I wouldn't say we're, shirking a responsibility. I think we're number 7 in NATO for total spending, and like 24 out of all the countries worldwide. So we do have a commitment to it, but there's definitely room for improvement.
Morale is dependent on the budget. If new recruits don't see new equipment, are they going to feel supported, and are they going to feel safe? That's where the budget impetus comes from. It's for the morale of the troops. And if 2% is the number that we're searching for, I don't think we should wait until 20-something. I think we should do it today. And the reason we should do it is to out-Trump Trump at his own game.
Another significant issue is the procurement of new equipment. Recently, Canada brokered a deal with BAE Systems in Australia to purchase a new Arctic over-the-horizon radar. This system is slated to cost $4 billion to acquire. This effectively steals the purchase from the U.S. Canada is also now revisiting its commitment to purchase American F-35 fighters. This was a deal worth $13.2 billion for 88 F-35s amid growing tensions with the U.S. The NDP wants Canada to build its own jets. Is canceling this contract an error? Is this a mistake? Kevin, I'll start with you.
Thank you. I think this may be the first time that I've ever agreed with the NDP. I would love to see Canada build its own jets. We already have aircraft manufacturing within our borders. I think it would be reasonable to ask them to ramp up production and start working on Canada's next generation fighter.
Darren, you have a background in procurement. What are your thoughts?
I actually disagree. I think we should continue on with the purchase. The reason being, if we stop the purchase now, it could be years before we get another replacement with the way project procurement goes. If we have to restart the whole process, get new manufacturers to bid on it, it could be another 8 years. The program's been going on long enough. Decision was made. I think we need to stick to it.
I think we all would love to see a domestically produced military equipment. The problem is our defense industry, it was really great up until the 60s, and that's where we found the defense industry falling into supporting, providing components. So the F-35, for example, we do feed into that, the global supply chain for that, and we've received a lot of economic benefits from that, but we're not producing the fighter itself. And so we're very reliant on the United States. Certainly, there are folks who have raised concerns about the F-35's reliability if the Americans are not going to be a globally engaged partner. And as far as I know, there's no kill switch or anything like that. Certainly not something I would like to be in a fighter I'm flying. But what they can do is get in the way of maintenance. They can get in the way of spare parts, updating the software suite for what's a very sophisticated fighter. It's a tension here between acquiring these capabilities off the shelf, the best quality stuff now, to your point, we can't afford to wait further and further to push that back. We've been trying to get a new fighter since the 90s, essentially, right?
Yeah, we have.
Same in that radar system. I saw in the news as well, certainly some radar companies within Canada wishing they could have a part of that, but are they capable of providing that? Well, probably not, but we haven't invested in them, given them the certainty for you to go to the bank, get the loans you need, build up, and provide that capability. So we're in this position here where we're trying to procure systems. We need top-tier stuff because we're in an increasingly tough neighborhood with the thaw in the Arctic and with the United States changing their position. So we're needing to get quality equipment now, but we also want to build a domestic capacity, and in some ways, those are competing objectives.
Our final topic for tonight, the discussion centers around personnel and recruitment levels. The Canadian Armed Forces consist of regular and reserve force and Canadian Ranger personnel. The target strength is 71,500 regular force personnel and 68,000 reserve force. The current force strength is almost 12% less than those numbers at 68,000. And reserve forces are off strength by 67% at 23,000 personnel. The Canadian Armed Forces is trying to improve its recruitment. There's a probationary process, so applicants can begin training while waiting for their security clearances. And there is no longer a physical fitness or aptitude test. Instead, there's an assessment of current health and life skills. Darren, you ran a recruiting center. What do you think of these new procedures? Will these get us this type of soldier we need? With the current temperature and recent actions involving the United States, do you think recruiting will increase? Do you think more Canadians will line up to serve?
Well, what I think is the new initiatives, they will increase the number of applicants that are found suitable. But I think the big issue, from a general perspective, the recruitment centers are successful. They're getting the applicants. The issue is the training system can only train so many of those applicants at a certain time. I think the Canadian Forces Leadership and Recruit School has a throughput of 5,000 soldiers a year. And we can recruit. I think April 2024 to November 2024, we had, I think, 40,000 applicants, but only 4,000 plus were actually enrolled. The issue is not the recruitment center, it's the training organizations that have the capacity to train them.
Kevin, what are your thoughts?
I am under the impression that the recruiting system is in panic mode, and I'll ask you to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I read somewhere that permanent residents can now apply for the Canadian military. That's a massive change. It indicates a level of recruiting panic, chasing numbers. So I think recruiting knows they're in trouble,
But you bring up a very huge point. We've gone on recruiting drives before that were successful, and then we ran into training problems. And in fact, we shot ourselves in the foot because everybody waiting in training cells got sick and tired of waiting. And somebody offered them a job, and the military never saw them again. And they lost those people, and they were good people.
From the reserve standpoint, though, I think the attraction isn't the problem. In my experience, when I've either recruited or even talked to students, they're interested. It's a compelling career, but the problem is the processing. And so if you're applying, you're interested, you're a great candidate, and you're waiting 6 months, 12 months, 18 months for a part-time role, where especially if you're in a place where the cost of living is caught up to military wages, you're not really interested in pushing to become a part-time member. To be twice the citizen, it's a great role. I'd recommend anybody, but we got to get that processing under control to get them in the door, right? With that said, though, we've seen a real huge surge with the 51st state and annexation threats of interest. When we put the call out to Canadians, since our inception, Canadians stand up and they'll do their part if we open the door for them.
And the delay on security clearance years, especially if you're coming from, Afghanistan or a communist country. It was just the wait was just impossible. We couldn't deal with permanent residents.
Absolutely. Well, that's all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank my guests, Darren Kenny, Chris Hunt, and Kevin Spooner for joining me. I'm Stu Smoley. Good night and good luck.
All had a chance to sit and listen to that defense panel. I first want to say that none of us are really experts in the military, but that's one of the things that I think is important when we go to vote, is that as a country we have to think about all the issues. We have to think about the military, we have to think about our seniors, about the youth, and kind of all the problems when we go up there to vote, which is why I want to start with you, Rick, with this one question. I wanted to ask you, should Canada move more quickly towards reaching defense spending that is 2% of our GDP?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. So this has long been the expectation among NATO countries, is that you come up with a defense budget that is 2% of your GDP. And listen, I'm a proud Canadian, but Canada has not done a very good job in this regard. Over the past 20 or 25 years, we've become a terrible laggard, actually. When it comes to defense spending, the term that we often use in political science is a free rider. So Canada has been a bit of a free rider. We have depended on the power of the United States and our other allies, and we've not really shouldered the burden that is expected of us.
Carrie, what about you? Do you think we should be aiming to reach 2% even more quickly? Do it right now? Or how about 5%, which is the new European recommendation?
I think 5% completely beyond what we can reach. I think that should we work towards the 2%? The question then becomes, and Rick was spot on. I mean, we have for 2 generations at least, we have lived off protection of our friends from the South, and they were very good partners. And we made a deal, and our deal was that 2% of our GDP was going to be spent on the military. Now, as our panel pointed out, it's considerably less, and that considerably less shows up in a whole bunch of other areas. So we have more money being spent on Medicare, we have more money spent on education, on seniors programs, so on and so forth. So if we say, well, we're going to take that then from the 1.38 to the 2, then those 62 basis points, which is going to be a tremendous amount of money, has to come from someplace else. So we've been able to, over years and years and years, enjoy that. So I think it's going to take some time. We're going to have to find it from someplace else, but it's a great question, right?
So then I want to ask you, Ryan, do young people think about these kind of things? Are threats of war a concern of the folks like us under 25?
You know, I definitely think it is. I think it's a concern for all people, but at the same time, I think in my generation, I think that we worry about things that are a little bit futile in a sense. I know maybe I'm talking out of my own personal experiences, but sometimes you get so wrapped up in the day that you don't get a chance to think about that. And I feel like nowadays, especially with our social medias and our internet and stuff, as much as we are connected to the rest of the world, we are also in a bubble. We are completely in a bubble, and I actually talked about this when I was on the radio for the American election with you, Rick.
Right.
But basically, I believe that we, as a generation, my generation and Kira's, that we are in a bubble, even though it seems as though we are not. And that's part of the issue. And so I think that we are, yes, concerned about war, but at the same time, it feels so out of reach because we aren't being directly affected by it just yet. And I think that we need to start being a little bit more proactive in our thinking as a generation. I think we are worried about it, but not worried enough, in a sense.
So can I jump on that?
Absolutely.
I think that it's a really great really great way of phrasing that, because for so many Canadians, the idea of military conflict is just not there. But Canada has the third largest proportion of Ukrainian people in the world, and much of that is because they have come to Canada recently. I know the diaspora has already had a lot of Ukrainians here, but so many have come to Canada as a consequence of the Russian war. And so this is real. For a lot of years, Canadians have been able to put their head in the sand, and I say this, I'm a proud Canadian, but it is time for us to take this seriously. Out of 32 states in NATO, we are 28th in terms of defense spending. So we need to step it up.
Yeah, that is definitely a lot of different things to think about, and especially like as you turn 18 and you're welcome into the world of adulthood, you don't think about all the different things that you need to be thinking about. Like sometimes you're just trying to wake up and get through your day so that you can go back to bed, and you're not taking the time to think about all the things. You're not thinking about people in other countries. You're not thinking about what's happening to everybody. It's hard to try and find a balance between becoming that adult who is thinking and well known about everything in the world.
And I think there's nothing wrong with the fact that, as a generation just wakes up and worries about what's in front of us, because obviously, we've all been through that at this point, where we're just thrown into a new world, and it feels completely different. It genuinely does. And for some people, it's a little bit different. Growing up, it's under different circumstances, and sometimes you're a little bit more aware when you are growing up more in your teen age. But when you become an adult, I've noticed, obviously, that it's just a brand new environment, and it is hard to prioritize your thoughts and prioritize what your brain, power is going towards. And definitely, I agree with you for sure. But there's nothing wrong with it. But I think that it's important to acknowledge it and take those next steps towards becoming aware.
Okay, Ryan, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Actually, I'm going to ask Kira this question as well. So, when we talk about the military, is the military viewed as a viable career option for young people your age? You're at that point. Would you view it, now you've both chosen to pursue opportunities in areas like media. Is the military something that friends of yours are looking at and saying, boy, that's a viable option for me coming out of high school?
I actually do have a friend myself that's applying to the military this summer, and he is very strong in believing that.
I'm so sorry, Ryan, but Erica's telling me that she has something to tell us, and it's time for a fresh election update. Erica, I believe there are some fast results coming in. Erica?
That's right. Lots is happening now, and at least one political party looks to be having a very bad night. Remember, the magic number is 172. That's how many seats will win a majority for a party in the House of Commons in Ottawa. In other words, the first to 172 will form the government. So far, about 237 seats are reporting results. That's of the total 343. The actual number of votes that have been counted are still pretty low. Now, I want to tell you something crazy. I could hear my producer freaking out about this in my ear earlier. CTV News has actually just declared that Mark Carney and his Liberals will form the next government. We here think it's much too early to tell yet. We are not ready to declare a winner. So let's take a look at the national picture. Sorry. We're
So sorry,
putting my
Erica.
board
You
up.
could
No, we're
continue.
good.
Please continue,
Sorry.
Erica. Sorry about that.
Nope. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I'm
We
going
have
back
to go
you,
to
Kira.
WCG. We will be back with you as soon as we can. Colin Sellick has more updates for us. We will be back in 7 minutes. See you soon.
Okay, welcome back to WCG TV. Thank you again to Assiniboine College, doing a great job over there. Fun fact, Cullen and Brad, who is working like crazy behind the scenes, both Assiniboine College grads. So, you know, they've done both sides of this.
Alumni represent.
So, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news to my home province of BC, but looks like it's going to get called before it gets to BC.
So everyone in BC should just stay home?
Just go home. Just turn the TV off.
Go to bed.
Fire up Netflix. You know, sorry guys. We tried. I tried. I really hope that, you know, there'd be some excitement on the West Coast. Of course, there's excitement in individual ridings. You know, we're joking. So right now, CTV News, at least, is declaring a Liberal win. Whether, you know, we'll still see. You know, our friends at Assiniboine College said too soon to tell, and that's fair too. So we'll see what happens. But now the question maybe is, are we looking at a minority or a majority? Now I'm going to give my prediction. I'm going to double down on my original, and I'm going to call.
She wants that Happy Meal so
I want that
bad.
Happy Meal so bad. I am calling for a Liberal majority. I am doubling down, putting it all on red. So, all right, Spooner, what do you think?
Well, I don't know if I can back off of my Conservative majority, but PPC majority. There we go. No, I'm kidding, of course. Liberal minority is probably the smart choice. I think actually it's gonna go a Liberal majority, just like you said, but because I can't argue with the numbers.
Yeah.
They don't lie, and everything is just leaning Liberal. You know, more of the same.
More of the same. And so we were, I don't want to say we were hoping for some prizes. We were anticipating maybe some surprises. Not a ton of surprises yet, but you know, there is still more to go. And
we have a huge surprise. You joined us today.
Oh.
Not an ACC grad.
Not an ACC
She's doing
grad.
this au naturel. Well done,
Actually,
Emmy.
fun fact, I did go to ACC for one semester about 20 years ago. So
Close
did not
enough.
finish the program.
Close enough. Well, I just wanted to
but-
make sure that you were recognized, that you were last minute just invited into
Wow.
this, and you took it on wholeheartedly. Well done.
Always happy to be invited. Thank you. I appreciate it. We're having a good time here. So on the subject of surprise, no surprise, Colin, I know Assiniboine College, you guys are doing a great job tracking our local riding here, but you've been digging deep into some historical facts, and so far, it doesn't seem like there's much of a change in the trends in our local riding here at Brandon Souris. What are you finding out?
No, but so with the numbers that are currently coming in for the Brandon Souris riding for, you know, who has the most amount of votes, one thing I kind of find interesting, as it currently stands right now, according to CTV, 10 of the 194 polls reporting in Brandon Souris, so far the Conservatives have a vast majority lead, and this is something that I don't think it's much of a surprise to the Brandon Souris riding, because ever since the official Brandon Souris riding was created in 1953, the Conservatives have won every single election except for one, when the Liberals won in 1993. Now, since 2000, there has been 8 elections, and in all 8 elections, the Conservatives have won all 8 in the Brandon Souris riding. But the one thing that I find a little interesting is, in the 8 elections, out of those 5 out of those 8 elections, the NDP were second place.
Okay.
And the Liberals were second place twice, and if you remember the Canadian Alliance Party, they were second in 2000. So I just find a little interesting. Predominantly, the Conservatives will always win Brandon Souris. The NDP will always get second. As it currently stands right now, the Liberals are in second place in the Brandon Souris riding, according to CTV. It's currently sitting at supposedly 264 current votes. Again, very, very low. This is just
Early
coming
days.
in. But as of right now, the Liberals are in second place, and I found that to be a bit of a surprise. I just thought because of the voter fatigue in the party, historically the Liberals haven't done very well in Brandon Souris, so I'm a little surprised by that.
So I kind of don't think I'm surprised. And the reason is watching, you know, and going back to the psychology of it all again, in such a a neck and neck race that we saw here, I'm wondering if the people that naturally would have voted for some of the outlier parties, like maybe you would have voted NDP or Green Party or something like that. What's the right one again? The
Conservative? Oh, PPC.
PPC,
Yeah,
right? So somebody that maybe would have voted for one of those outliers because that's the most in alignment with their value system. In this election, it being neck and neck, maybe we're looking at more strategic voting, right? So, here people are more, voting strategically than, with their hearts, perhaps. I don't know. Kevin, what do you think about that? Do you think I'm on track, or do you think...
I think there's actually a riding that demonstrates what you're talking about so well. That's
is
the
there?
riding of Kitchener Centre, our little lone gem in the rough. Oh, go Kitchener!
What's Kitchener doing?
Kitchener is actually voting the Green Party. They've
Green
decided
Party.
to vote their heart instead of their strategy.
Okay.
And, well, gotta love them. I mean, go Kitchener. I don't think they feel like they're wasting their vote. And the reason why is I think they believe very strongly in what their vote represents. And I think they're trying to keep the Green Party alive. And, you got to root for an underdog.
That's what you've been doing all night, is rooting for the underdogs. So do you think it's safe to say that typically in this election we're seeing more people polled to either red or blue that maybe would have voted something else, but they're now more strategically voting?
I think Quebec is a good example of that. We had predicted that Quebec would either shift to Liberal or Conservative.
Yeah.
But they are totally following suit with their historical trends, meaning that, nothing has really happened to shake their core.
Okay, and so there's one riding here we see going Green Party, which that's kind of cool, and so that makes me wonder why. Like, what is with the outliers? Is that Green Party candidate an incredibly strong, involved part of that community, and so people are voting for the person rather than the party? Do we think that's what we're seeing?
I think you're
there?
exactly onto something. Mike Morris has a charismatic and very powerful message,
okay.
and he really resonates with his voters.
Yeah.
And I think these polls show that extremely well, that they're willing. I mean, the Liberals are nipping their heels. The
Right.
Green Party is not a landslide.
Okay.
But I think this is a great example of how people love their party, they love their candidates, and they're willing to vote for them.
Okay.
A lot of interesting results. Well, you're going to send it back to ACC.
Welcome back. There is quite chaos happening right now, but we need to go right over to Erica here because Erica has a lot to share that she didn't get to earlier. So Erica, please tell us what you've got.
Yes, Kira, it has been quite a chaotic few minutes over here, but we are getting word that both Global and CTV have called the election for the Liberals. And as well, CBC has also called it for the Liberals. Taking a look at the federal seats leading and elected, Conservatives 112, Liberals 146, and in a bit of an upset, the NDP are only leading and elected in 6. Bloc Québécois leading and elected in 22. I believe I'm also being told that the Washington Post has called it, interestingly. So it's been quite a night. It's not yet clear if it's going to be a minority or a majority government. That is still in play, yet to be decided. As I said earlier, you are not getting any opinions from me. I'm not paid enough for that. So I believe I will throw it back to my very capable host, Kira. Kira, what do you guys think?
Yes, Erica, thank you very much. I know everyone over here has a lot to say, so let's open it up. Who would like to start? And I'd also like to note that we have welcomed back Brody, and they will be sharing a microphone, so just, this is that movie magic that you see, so please bear with us with that. But whoever wants to go, please.
I think movie magic indeed. It's a very exciting. I note, and when we were at break, I think the people at home should know how we were very quickly digesting what CBC and CTV and Global were saying. But I think, I really liked it, Kara, when you said, our job isn't to be first, it's to be best and to be accurate. And I thought that was a really insightful point. And I'm really proud of the fact that you sort of stepped up to the forefront on that. But what's your take on this? What's going on? Is this is this call for real? You're the political scientist.
This is remarkable. This is remarkable. The biggest thing that's sort of going through my head right now is the collapse of the NDP. I think it's 6 seats. Is that what they're
5?
5.
Yeah, it said 6 or 5 up there.
So that's a tectonic shift.
What's that say about Canada? Was that, I mean, the NDP have always sort of tried to carve out this space for themselves as the party of, working class Canadians, the working man, to use an old-fashioned phrase. Like, are they done for? Is this over?
Well, I think it's just an interesting shift. Like one of the, I can't remember which news outlet I saw it on, but they said the current numbers the Conservatives had, if it was in the 2021 election, that would have been enough to get them to win. So I think it's just, you're just seeing in the Donald Trump effect, I think, if you want to put it that way, in this election. I think people have just, the Liberals' campaigning tactic of equating Pierre Poilievre to Donald Trump, I think this is a clear-cut sign that, it worked. And I think it is relevant, I think, to the Canadian political climate right now. And I think that a lot of the NDP base support, I think a lot of them shifted over to the Liberal side to go for Mark Carney. And I think that, whether in future elections, what'll happen, I don't know if it's game over for the NDP, but I think in this election for sure, I think the NDP have seen that a lot of their party support shift away and go to the Liberal side. So definitely an interesting take, though, for sure.
I have a question, and forgive me if this is a silly question, but how often does this happen in Canadian politics? Does it happen often?
Like a huge shift like that? No, it doesn't happen. Doesn't happen every year, and there's no way. So what would have been the last?
So if you could say, in 2015, when we saw the going into that election, if memory serves, did Stephen Harper not have a majority? Thomas Mulcair was leading the NDP, and in fact, an upstart Liberal leader that none of us thought had much of a chance. And you'll remember the ads for Justin. He's great hair, but he's just not ready. On the strength of his debate, you'll remember he went from 3rd place and ended up winning. I think that's a big one. I think 1984. I mean, I'll remember
Definitely,
that. Where we went from the Pierre Trudeau, which Erica mentioned earlier when we were talking about that, the Pierre Trudeau period, the John Turner, little break, to the Brian Mulroney and 2 consecutive, Conservative majorities. So, that really blew that, that Liberal rule for which had gone from 68 when Trudeau got in, and maybe 62 when Pearson got in, something to that effect.
I just wanted to ask, we know what's going on, but what do we think the differences will be if it ends up being majority or a minority government? What will we be expecting between those difference of results?
Yeah, I think the difference between a majority and a minority government, I think, just has a lot of impacts on policy. I think it helps, when you have a majority government, not only it helps you, be able to get bills passed more efficiently because you have more support within the House of Commons. With a minority government, it also has that threat of your government being torn down and it's just a lot of more tension within the House of Commons. I think that it maybe can support, like with the minority government where you had the NDP Liberal coalition, it can help foster for things to get done, like pharmacare getting done and those kind of plans where the NDP were able to position themselves to get what they wanted on their agenda done. But I think in this instance, with the NDP being so, pulled back in a minority in this instance, you could maybe see the Bloc Québécois maybe voting in a confidence. It would be hard. I know Yves Blanchet, part of my French is awful, but I don't know. It would be hard to say if he would vote in a vote of non-confidence or not. I think that's a question that would be answered in the future. But I definitely think that there are some impacts with whether it's a majority or minority. I think there's still a lot at stake here.
Anyone else have more about the majority-minority?
Would you like the talking pen?
Yeah.
It looks just a mysterious, we got the talking pen going here.
Well, I'm really curious to see how this shakes out and to see what kind of what's going to happen with the Bloc Québécois, right? With the minor parties, to see yeah, it's really difficult to know the makeup of the House at this point, and so yeah, it's hard to predict what's going to happen here.
I've got a source indicating to me that the Nikki Ashton in Churchill is in trouble, and the Liberals are leading in 7 Manitoba ridings, which literally goes back to the early Chrétien period, if you'll remember. And that's interesting to me. And I was going to ask you this. I have never seen a time at which the 2 major parties in Canada have had such a high percentage of the vote. It feels like there's somewhere around 80% of the vote is going to these 2 main parties. Am I missing something?
No, that is an enormous change, right? And particularly more recently, when we've had multiple smaller parties, right? We've had the NDP, we've had the Bloc Québécois, we've had the People's Party, right? We've had the Greens. This is a pretty big shift in the electoral makeup.
I have a couple questions, and maybe just food for thought, as well as just another, please forgive me if these are silly questions. I am not as educated as you are. But I'm seeing a little bit of a parallel, and I'm wondering if there's a correlation between how the states have their two parties. And I feel like I've noticed that we've, as a country, have now almost shifted to just 2 parties. And of course, there are the other 3. That are getting votes, but not as many, significantly not as many. And it feels as though almost as if we're trapping ourselves into the same thing that we were talking about earlier, where it's if we're all voting for the same thing, there's less diversity, less perspective, and are we changing as a government? It seems as though we're taking a new step.
Well, we really could be. I mean, it's hard to know what's going to happen in the coming days and in the coming years, obviously, but it does look like there's sort of a narrowing of party options, and if we look at the United States and the nature of politics in the United States, when you only have a 2-party system, it leads to a really conflictual setup, and that's something that we've often avoided in Canada because we have the third parties where people can park their votes. But if this is the beginning of something bigger, if this is the beginning of a trend that is moving us towards a 2-party system, I think that's from my perspective, that's bad for our politics.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, and I just, I'm imagining, and a lot of people think that, pardon me if this is a little bit biased, but I believe that a lot of people think that Americans believe that they are kind of the center of the world, and I know that that's a little bit biased. I'm not too sure about everybody's opinions, but I feel as though we're learning a lot from them, and I don't know, you said it was bad in your opinion, and I'd have to agree with you, but I just, I'm seeing a lot of parallels and a lot of just the new trends seem to be really coinciding with the way the states have been going about their politics. And actually, I've noticed that there are a lot of my generation that are especially more invested in American politics in Canada in comparison to Canadian politics. And speaking personally, and I'm going to be honest, I see a lot and I hear a lot more about American politics than I do Canadian. And in a way that's almost concerning to me, because I want to be able to understand my own government before any other ones. There's a sense of a hierarchy in my mind of what's more important, and that's directly affecting me, and it's directly affecting everyone in my generation here in Canada. And I believe that maybe that's a concern, that we are more concerned about what the United States are doing in comparison to Canada, but that's just, again, maybe a bit of a biased opinion. But
well, no, and I think I agree with you, because there's the famous saying that some of my professors have said to me in class: when America coughs, Canada sneezes. And I think what you're saying there is very relevant to that point. I think it's just, especially, I kind of want to touch about your subject about, you were talking a bit about social media and about that. And I think that has been something that I think I really, within my research in my undergrad at BU, have been looking at how individuals within the electorate can get polarized by getting into these say for example the social media application TikTok, if any of you are familiar with, you can get caught into these algorithm bubbles that will confirm your own biases on all political stripes, and it will feed you information that confirms your own biases, and you're not getting that exposure to all streams of media. And I think that's one of the problems I think that is maybe going to be seen going forward, especially with the rise of artificial intelligence. This is getting a bit off edge here.
But to your point, though, Brody, I think what we're dealing with right now is this idea, and you're hitting on it exactly, Ryan, which is this idea of narrow casting, right? So really what we're doing is we're seeking media not that informs us, but rather that affirms our point of view. So some on the conservative side may look to Fox as their primary source of factual information. Others may look to MSNBC, and then we're not even speaking the same language to each other. And we're being affirmed in our beliefs as opposed to being informed about what facts are, which concerns me. And you're spot on in regards to the algorithms on things like TikTok and other social media. But I don't know, Ryan, what are your thoughts?
Well, sorry, Ryan.
No, that's okay. I was just about to pass it off to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We're having a great discussion here, but we are going to come back to it. But I think we need to think a little bit local. It is time to look at how the Manitoba results are coming in. So, Erica, what are we seeing here in Manitoba?
So, Kira, let's examine the Manitoba results and also dig down on the Westman region. First up, the general Manitoba picture. So, as you can see, Conservatives and Liberals are tied at 7 seats, leading and elected. This is roughly what we picture for this area. You know, NDP does not have a very strong hold here. Neither does the Green Party. People's Party of Canada doesn't really have much of a hold anywhere. In fact, their party leader has lost in his home riding by quite a large margin, I'm told. Grant Jackson, our Conservative leader for Brandon Souris, has 5,487 votes, and the Liberal leader has 1,706, and our NDP leader has 1,040. This is, again, about what we expect for Brandon Souris. Riding Mountain has also been called, I believe, quite a bit earlier in the night. No surprise, it has gone Conservative, as it has been for many, many years past. Not much of a NDP, Green, or People's Party of Canada hold here either. In Portage Lisgar, same thing. No surprise here. Conservatives have taken the majority of the vote. Liberals, NDP, Green, and People's Party of Canada trailing behind. And again, the People Party of Canada leader has lost their riding by quite a margin to a Conservative, which is quite interesting to see. So that is where we are now. Now, I will say that the Assiniboine Decision Desk continues to say it's not quite ready to declare a winner. It's possible the Decision Desk stepped out for a bite of the pizza, but so far we're still not ready to call it a night. And of course, we don't know whether it's going to be minority government or a majority government. Back to you, Kira.
Well, thank you very much for that, Erica. It was good to know where we are at for Manitoba. So now let me ask the panel, what happens exactly to the losing leaders tonight? If the NDP loses most of their seats, as looks possible, does Jagmeet Singh, sorry, just 1 second, that prompter is just moving a little bit, so that's okay. We're going to find out where it went. And does Jagmeet Singh have a future? How about Poilievre? He turned a 20-point lead into an electoral defeat. Can he stay in charge of the Conservatives? What does this all mean exactly?
Guys.
I would say there's going to be a wholesale change in a bunch of these parties. But I wasn't entirely sure about one of the results here. Did the results say that there's no NDP right now in Manitoba?
Correct. Yeah, that's what Erica mentioned.
Okay.
It's shocking.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. Erica hit the nail on the head when she pointed out that literally of the 14 seats, we had 7 Conservative and 7 Liberal is staggering. And earlier in the show, Erica was mentioning, when you think about Manitoba and you think about the NDP, you think about Tommy Douglas. I mean, you think about Ed Schreier. You think about, some tremendously popular and outstanding Canadian politicians that the NDP has had over the years, and none of them are going to be on the federal stage.
Am I mistaken to believe that Manitoba has been, in the past, split Conservative and NDP for the majority of that? That's what I've, yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's right.
I just wanted to confirm with you on that one. That is a big shock then, for sure.
Well, and even provincially, if you look at the provincial legislature, there's only one Liberal seat within the Manitoba Legislature Assembly, and it's an NDP government right now. So I think that this just even shows even more that the NDP support has been shifted to Mark Carney, and I think that has been repeated over and over again. And I think the one thing, if I'm going to jump back to that Jagmeet Singh question, I think it's game over, unfortunately. I think that this is just going to be a hard reset for the NDP, and I think they're just going to have to go back to the drawing board on campaigning, on their party, and everything, I think. So unfortunately for Jagmeet Singh, the cat race earlier, I think, was maybe not indicative of what the results maybe were going to be. So yeah, unfortunately for Jagmeet Singh.
Brody, I think Poilievre comes out of this in better shape and more secure, that even while he did not perform to the degree I think that his party expected, and certainly that he expected prior to the election, I think that he did well, and by the collapse of the other sort of secondary parties, I think it makes his position more important. I think although, I indicated, and Erica mentioned this actually earlier off mic, that he may be losing his seat. So that is an area of concern as well. But I think Singh has got to go and find a new career. Politics, he's very well spoken, very thoughtful, but his ability to excite people or to appear as a reasonable alternative in these days of Donald Trump sort of overwhelming the Canadian electorate appear to be at an end.
Well, yeah, and I'd have to agree with you on the Poilievre point. I think that, again, these polling numbers, if we look back at past elections, I'd be interested to see if you could get the statistics on the percentage numbers. The shifting of that NDP support, I think, is what gave the Liberals the win in this election. How much it is, majority, minority, that's yet to be seen. But I honestly think in a paper I wrote a paper recently with Dr. David Doherty, and in that paper we were looking at the effectiveness of Mark Carney and whether this will be a long-lasting thing or not. So I'm really interested to see within even the next couple of years if this is a minority government. First thing, how stable is it going to be? With Donald Trump, we still have that around after this election. And also the fact is too is, will Mark Carney be able to ride it out if it is a minority government? And if it's a majority government, I think, the converse of that could be, there's lots of things at play here still. And I think that's the really, really interesting part about, it's just a unique situation. And I don't know, this is my also first federal election I've voted in. So it's just a really interesting thing to analyze, I think. And I agree with your point there you brought up. It'll be interesting to see what happens, with Poilievre riding, and whether he's still leader after this election will be, I think maybe have to do with minority majority.
If he forms a minority government, Carney, who does he form it with, Rick?
Doesn't he have to go, who does he, yeah.
Right?
He's going to have to cobble together a bunch of things.
I'm looking at this and I'm saying, does he somehow convince members of the Bloc to join with him? There's so far right now we're looking at something like 9 members of the NDP.
I'm very, very sorry. We're going to go back to that, but we have just received some raw video from our reporters in the field. Grant Jackson is arriving at his headquarters to applause. It's not yet clear if he's been declared the winner or not. Maybe that's not really necessary in Westman, but he doesn't really want to speak until the fate of his party and his leader is clear. Grant Jackson might even want to let Poilievre speak first. By the way, we said earlier that some of the Conservative candidates were hard to reach. Grant Jackson was not among them. He was very generous with his time, giving interviews and helping our team at every step of the way. So as we see here, oh, it's not anymore. He was in Joe Beaver's, arriving to applaud from everyone around there that was at the event, there to support Grant Jackson throughout his campaign and throughout his winning that we will possibly be seeing now. And now we have to go back to WCG TV, and we will be back in 7 minutes. We will see you soon. Stay with us.
And welcome back to WCG TV studios. We have been watching these results like hawks here. Colin, our numbers man. So, Colin, explain this to me. So we have elected, and then we have elected and leading, which I can understand that. Now, right now, I'm just, seeing, am I gonna win this? Like I was so confident last time. But what I'm seeing is the elected is actually neck and neck. Like it's kind of like close. But then when we switch over to elected and leading, we see CTV reporting the Liberals at 160 and the Conservatives at 135. So still a Liberal win there, but the elected is neck and neck. So what are you seeing here?
Yeah, well, see, it's funny because it depends on who you're looking at and who's projecting what, because you're saying, CTV is like saying 161 to 134 for the Liberals, but I'm on CBC here, and CBC is currently sitting at 158 to 134.
Right.
Now, the CBC website, I think, did have some crashing issues, so I hope it's not crashing on me actively.
CBC? Crash, come on.
But yeah, you are right. What seats are elected and what seats are leading, they are, of course, changing. The elected seats, the Liberals do have the lead. It is narrow. And when you add the leading, they do have a comfortable lead. I don't think they will lose that lead in terms of actually winning the election, because CBC still is projecting that the Liberals will win. But now I think, but now it's that race to the finish line of will or will not the Liberals get a majority. Now, there are a number of seats that haven't been reported yet. Because we're almost at that. It's like 340 something seats that are in all of Canada. But there are some seats that haven't been reported yet, so that could sway numbers of could the Liberals get a majority? Could the Liberals get a majority or not based on what seats haven't been reported yet? Because if they're in the middle of nowhere in Alberta, okay, well you probably can't count that to go towards the Liberals. But one thing that I'm seeing, and again, this is according to the CBC projection map, there are quite a number of seats in the Vancouver metro area that haven't been reported yet, which makes sense. Obviously, like they're in the West Coast, it's 752 for them, it's 952 for us. So assuming that the vast majority of those unreported ridings go to the Liberal Party, that could swing them very, very close, because again, as of now on the CBC, 158. And if they were to get even half of these, that would push them very, very close. And other unreported areas I haven't seen, because I was just kind of focusing.
I'm looking at the CTV is showing us that there's now 8 seats left to report. So just getting a few there. Are polls closed in the West now, or are they? Do we know are polls closed?
Most of the polls were closed, almost all the polls were closed a while ago. I have to be honest, I'm not too sure on which ones are, if there are any that are still open or not. But just jumping around some of these metro areas. Most of the other metro areas, especially on the East Coast, have been called, or just on the eastern edge of the country. So. Yeah, it's very tight. Like, if you're the Liberal Party, I don't know if they'll be able to get a majority, or if they do, it will come down to the wire.
Yeah,
the absolute wire.
Because I see right now they have Liberals at 162. They need 172 for the majority. We have less than 10 that haven't reported yet. So it's kind of neck and neck for that majority minority.
Yeah, for sure. And again, with the leading, out of all the leading seats, the Liberals have that lead in the leading at 88 to 82, according to CBC. So, of course, some seats could easily flip. The Liberals could get nowhere close, or maybe they will go over a majority. Maybe all Conservative ballots were counted first. I don't know.
So speaking of some seats potentially flipping, Kevin, your theme for the night has been that surprises. And when I look at the map here and I just give it that broad strokes look, I see that west going very blue. Like that's like, it looks like the ocean. Yeah. It's just like a sea of blue. And you said you looked it up because we were kind of wondering, what does BC do historically? And it's like the wild card.
Yeah, it's
so
the Wild West.
If BC's the wild card and it goes all over the place and we see this sea of blue moving, do you think you might get your surprise yet?
I'm gonna not make any predictions. What I will do, though, is exactly what you said. I'm going to amplify that. I don't think this race is over. In fact, every time we update our CBC, we get some pretty different numbers. And like you said, there is a blue wave that is present, right? They polled high for a reason when they did poll high. But right now, we're looking at the West being the last chance for the Conservatives to get something in this election. And just so happens in BC, Powell River has answered the bell. They are bucking historical trends and going all in on the Conservatives.
On the Conservatives?
On the Conservatives,
okay.
yeah. And like we were talking about before, BC does tend to vote all over the place, and this is an example of it. It only remains to see whether it catches on, whether this is an indication of something that we haven't noticed yet, or maybe CBC crashes every time Conservatives take the lead. That could be the situation too.
Are you getting into conspiracies? We are not doing conspiracy theories tonight.
Everyone loves a good conspiracy.
Enough of that. So, okay, and like I see, like for instance, the prediction was showing 162 for Liberals, and now it's showing 160, right? So we can see how that,
yeah, so it
that
ebbs
keeps
and flows
changing.
in real time. And again, as according to CBC, elected seats are 70 to 53 for the Liberals, so they do have that sizable lead. But and in the leading, they're obviously still in the lead there, but very, very tight.
But then elected, my elected, maybe CTV is a bit of ahead. I have 77 for Liberal, 72 for Conservative. So even closer.
Even closer, right? Yeah. And again, like which major media market projects what, it's hard to say. So it'll be hard to really say what the actual result will be to like a majority or minority. I'm going to safely assume we should have an answer before midnight.
I'm still calling Conservative majority.
Well, we still have a few seconds here. It's still calling a Conservative majority. Boo, who let this guy in? Okay, but what I am going to say is I'm going to retract something I said that maybe BC does count. Maybe the BC vote is going to matter this time.
Go BC!
I was excited for it, and then I got a little low, and then I got excited.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, we will see, but we're going to throw it back to the ACC studios.
Right on.
Welcome back. We're going to go right now to the results with Erica. Erica, what do you have ready for us over there?
Thanks, Kira. So I believe Mark Carney's seat has been called. He has won. We do not yet have word on Pierre Poilievre's seat or Jagmeet Singh's seat yet. It is a little bit early for Singh's seat, though, as he is in BC, and as we mentioned, that is a little bit later in the day for us. But if we're looking at Mark Carney's riding right now, he does have well over half of the vote in his riding. This, I think, was to be expected. He's gotten very popular in the few days that he's been our prime minister. Interestingly, this is very good news for him, as if he had lost, he would have been our shortest serving prime minister after Charles Tupper, who served back all the way back in 1896 for, I believe, 69 days. But now I believe we are looking at the numbers for Pierre Poilievre's riding. As of right now, he is losing, which is a bit of a shock, I think. It is too early to say for sure. There are still polling quite a bit in his area. I believe we're going to Jagmeet Singh's riding next. Here it is. He is not doing good, folks. It's looking pretty grim for him and the entire NDP party, to be quite frank. Tonight, they've, I believe, lost a few seats in Manitoba, or it's at least looking like they are going to. We're going to go to the federal results next. As you can see, Liberals are leading above the Conservatives, not by a huge majority. The NDP has finally taken some, they are leading and elected in some seats. We don't know for sure yet whether they've taken them. Same thing for the Bloc Québécois. But I think these results are about what we were expecting. A Liberal lead with, most likely, we are going to be looking at a minority government. But as of right now, those are all the results I have for you guys. Sorry, no, I lied. We are going to the prairies next. That's my bad, everybody. As you can see, we have Conservative with 53 seats, Liberals with 9, NDP with a measly 2. This is leading and elected. Oh, sorry. My producer, apologies, is telling me that those were the 2021 results. We will have the prairie results for you later. We're going to bring up the Manitoba results now. So as you can see, the Conservatives leading and elected in 7. These numbers have changed a bit since we last spoke because the Liberals now are leading and elected in 6, and the NDP are leading and elected in 1. So this will definitely be an interesting thing to keep an eye on as we go. We are going to go to Westman now. As you can see, Grant Jackson, well over half, almost 9,000 votes, blowing the other 2 candidates out of the water. But again, this was to be expected in the Conservative stronghold of Brandon Souris. Taking a look at Portage Lisgar next, very similar to Brandon, well over half for the Conservative, and split the vote the rest of the way with all our other candidates. Looking at Riding Mountain now, same thing, exactly as expected. Conservatives over half the vote, split the rest of the way by the other 4 parties. Again, these results are not really surprising for our area here in Westman. We are very typically a strong Conservative stronghold. That is all the results I have for you now. Back to you, Kira.
Thank you very much, Erica, for all that information that you have shared with us, including the whole entire night. Thank you very, very much. And now I want to know, what are your guys' thoughts on how, now that we know that it looks like the Liberals are going to win and Mark Carney is going to be the person in power as Prime Minister, what do we think that Canada is going to look like within the next year or 2? Let's start with Rick. How do you think, first, he is going to stand up against Donald Trump down there in the United States?
Well, I think we'll see him take a pretty strong approach against him. I think that, listen, I think Carney is well respected in Europe, and I think he's very connected. And I think that one of the things that Carney will do is, I think he will reach out to Germany and to the UK and to France, and I think he's going to try to make some efforts to shore up Canada's international relations. And I think that's one of the first things that he's going to do.
We have we're having a little bit of communication, but we are going to go with what the producer is saying. Grant Jackson is speaking right now, and we're going to go right to it. We have a reporter live right there. Let's see what's going on.
Our Conservative Party puts together under the leadership of Pierre Poilievre, and very excited to represent my home area, the Wheat City and Westman, in the House of Commons.
What's it mean? What's the change from McGuire to yourself for voters here? Like, what's the change there? And is he going to take things in a different direction, or?
Well, Larry McGuire has been an excellent member of Parliament for Brandon Souris. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And he's been a friend and a mentor to me. We are different people, and so I'm sure you'll find as time goes on that we will do parts of the job differently. But there's certainly a mentorship there, and I don't think that constituents will feel that there's a huge change in their representation. I want to be there for them. I want to be present in every community. I want to make sure that I'm hearing their issues directly and taking those directly to the floor of the House of Commons. That's my commitment to the voters of Brandon Souris, and I want to get that done.
Does it change anything? What do you think of overall results from country?
Well, obviously, we know there's still some more results to come in, but right now the Liberals are up. We're obviously disappointed by that. We had hoped for a strong conservative government to be elected to the House of Commons. We believe that this country needs change. Now, what you're seeing is that the Liberals' numbers and the Conservative numbers are tight. And so that is sending a message to Mark Carney and the Liberal Party that they cannot be 10 more years or 4 more years of the last 10, right? They need to change the way they do things, the way they engage with the Canadian public. People are not satisfied with what they've done over the last 10 years. We know that. And so we will hold them to account that they are delivering for Canadians on issues like affordability, on crime and safety, on our broken immigration system. They need to know that Canadians do not believe that the status quo is acceptable. And so we'll be making sure we're delivering that message in the House of Commons.
Is it going to affect your ability to speak for the people here in Meriden Centre?
Oh, I don't think so. As you know, I was an opposition MLA and I never had any issue sharing the concerns and priorities of my constituents to Wab Kinew and his government at the provincial level. And I will make sure to do exactly the same with Mark Carney and his Liberal government in Ottawa.
Are there any tips that Larry Maguire gave you taking over, MC?
Lots of tips for sure. But the main message you said is you got to be present in your community. You have to go up. You got to show up for the pancake breakfast, the 60th anniversary teas. You got to be there for all those small town events and those events, the big events here in the city. You got to balance your time. It's busy, but you got to make sure that you're present in your communities. That's the biggest piece of advice and the best piece of advice that a seasoned politician like him can give anybody that's running for elected office. Any other questions? First, 2 main goals for my first term. Well, first of all, I think we need to, and you'll know I commented on this at the beginning, there is so much potential at Brandon Airport. And I know this is something that the mayor is focused on here in the city as well. That facility is an asset for us. It was invested in the terminal by the last Conservative government. We know that there's lots of talk right now about adding an eastern passenger route. I think that's incredible. And so we need to be advocating and working as a whole of Westman approach to make sure that facility gets the upgrades it needs so that bigger planes can land here safely and ensure we have connectivity to Eastern Canada and the rest of the world. So that's priority number 1. Number 2, we understand that Mark Carney and his government don't like pipelines, but the key to prosperity in this country is our natural resource sector. And we need to get the oil and gas sector running at full steam again in Western Manitoba. I believe that we can do that. Mark Carney has said he doesn't like pipelines, but he wants to get natural resource projects done. I don't know how he's going to square that circle, but I'm going to go to Ottawa and be advocating on behalf of our natural resources sector here in Western Manitoba and the entire province to make sure we're getting those minerals out of the ground and into the market.
How you feel about the C-18 bill?
C-18?
To our reporters out there, live on location at Joe Beavers that were able to capture that talking to Grant Jackson, we are going to continue our conversation about the future. Who would like to speak next? Carrie, do you have any thoughts?
Well, I'm very excited about this evening. We really have seen our political system really now, I believe, has become sort of balkanized into 2 very clear sides. I mean, yes, we have that little bump that is the bloc, but by and large, you're either your right or your left, and or center right or center left, depending upon how you wish to skew it. The NDP is, as a political force, they may not even have official party status at the end of this. I think Carney ends up being a hero to his party. If we go back 3 months, the Liberals were going to be demolished in this election, whether it was going to be Trudeau or perhaps somebody like Chrystia Freeland leading. So I think it's a very interesting time, and I'm always excited and optimistic about the future of Canada. I think every time that we've faced a challenge, we've been able to surpass it, and we've met every challenge that I can remember, and we'll beat this one too. I don't know. What do you think, guys?
I think it's a great message to send, and I think you're right. I mean, there's lots of resilience in this country, and sure, there's changes in our politics, but I think who we are as a country is still the same. So there's been some changes, but I think we're gonna weather this, and we're gonna see what happens.
Yeah, and I think I'd have to agree with both of them here. And I think the conversation we had just on the break there about, the interesting note of, what is what will a government look like with Mark Carney? If it's a minority government who, with the coalition government with Trudeau was able to get the NDP support, will that happen with the Bloc Québécois? to be announced. And I think that also depends on whether it's a majority government or not, which we also talked about. But I think it's just, my point is, I think it's uncertainty. I think, for young people, I think yes, we have a new leader, there's a new mandate, Mark Carney's in. But I think now it's the test. Will these issues be addressed? And I think that's the note I want to leave it on for myself, is because I think that, we're in a crisis right now. And I think, the people have put their mandate in Mark Carney, and I think, it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen in the future here. And I think that, Mark Carney, I think will be able to fight that battle. But with Donald Trump, it can create a bit of an uncertain situation. But, I think that, Mark Carney is going to have his experience, I think Rick was talking about earlier with the leaders and his governor role. I think that'll help. But I think, for me, it's just the uncertainty portion of it.
Let me ask Ryan, what do you think? Is he up to the job?
I hope so. That's all I got. I don't know.
Very well said.
I just hope for the best for our future. I think this is a promising result. I think that they're, short term, I feel like promising result. I feel like overall, I stand by diversity in Canada, and I believe that there should be the perspectives, and the fact that we are split down the middle, red and blue. It's a little different to comprehend, but I think that Carney will. I think he'll hone his position pretty well, and hopefully, if he works well with the international international communications and just makes a connection with the people of Canada as well as the international connection, I think that we will be in a good spot. But that's just maybe my optimism speaking as well.
I know that federal elections are obviously different than provincial, but with provincial that we have right now, we have Wab Kinew. I'm not very, I don't know much about politics, but does Wab Kinew's presence as an NDP person in the provincial parliament, does that affect anything with the federal, or is that completely not connected?
It doesn't, they're not connected explicitly, but maybe this is an opportunity for Wab Kinew to try to achieve a kind of a federal profile, right? I mean, he's done some good things here in Manitoba, and maybe that's going to be the next step for him. I'm not sure.
What's interesting, and I love the fact, by the way, you started the question by downplaying your political knowledge. The points you were dropping here when we were off camera were incredible, so give yourself some credit. What I thought, if you think about the three Canadians who probably have gotten the biggest profile coming out of the Trump election, Mark Carney, Doug Ford, probably Wab Kinew in terms of the best profile coming out of all of this. So I don't really think of Wab as, he doesn't strike me as the type of NDP that wouldn't be able to work with anybody. I think he's done a very good job communicating in the past on a lot of these issues, and I don't see why he wouldn't be able to continue.
I definitely feel like there's going to be a lot of new things happening in the near future, and I think that it's exciting, a little nerve-wracking for those of us who are a little undereducated on politics, I think, but very exciting, and I'm eager to see how things play out, and how we as a country are able to make a difference ourselves.
So we do have a Conservative candidate, Brandon Leslie, speaking at his headquarters in Portage. Leslie is the unofficial winner of the Portage-Lisgar riding. He's at a local diner right there, so we're going to take a look at that right now.
Well, thank you, Hans, for the warm introduction. Thank all of you for being here on a big night for our country, and I'll touch a little bit more on some of the national results that we're seeing behind us here. But I first want to say we're here to celebrate a victory. And yes, it is my name on the ballot and it is my name on the signs, but I would not be in this position if it were not for all of you. And I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for all of your support. It means the absolute world to me. And I want to thank the people of Portage-Lisgar that have provided a vote of confidence in the work that I've been able to do. And it's a very humbling experience for me, because it was just over 2 years ago I stood literally at this podium in this room, starting the entirety of the nomination process to become your Conservative candidate, moving on to be your Member of Parliament just a few months later. So this has been, it's an emotional night, but your confidence in me, in our party, in our movement means the world to me. Sending me back to Parliament is not a responsibility that I take lightly. And I am beyond humbled every time that I get the chance to walk in to the House of Commons. I'm also extremely humbled every time that I am out in our community, particularly during an election campaign. Times are obviously heightened, but when I'm at the Co-op gas bar here in town and I get a guy yelling, "Go get him, Brandon!" Being recognized in the grocery store, people just saying, you know, we got your back, Brandon, we support you. It means more than you know. I was walking down Rose Street today, knocking on doors, and there's like 7 signs there. It's so humble.
Okay, so that was Leslie there in Portage Lisgar, and I know that Erica has a little bit more that she wants to say. So yes, that was he has been the declared winner of the Portage Lisgar, and I'm just gonna keep reading what was just written there. It's always hard with the producer writing as we're going here, but we now have Erica Brake, as I said, and we're gonna go through the picture now. Erica.
Thanks, Kira. Taking a look at our election results so far, as mentioned and as we just saw, Brandon Leslie has been elected in the Portage Lisgar riding. We're going to go to the federal leading and elected first. Conservative are at 148 leading and elected. Liberal are at 156. NDP are at 11. Green Party have 1. And Bloc Québécois have 26. And as stated, these are leading and elected numbers, so not for sure official seats. We are now going to the prairies again. Conservatives, no surprise, leading and elected in 54 ridings, Liberals in 9, NDP in 2, and Green Party and People's Party of Canada both with 0. Again, no surprises here. This is pretty par for the course. Liberals are doing pretty well, I'm being told by my producer. We're going to Manitoba next. Conservatives still at 7, Liberals still at 6, NDP with 1. Again, these are leading and elected numbers. Not really a surprise here. No Green, no People's Party. Brandon Souris, we're looking at, like we said, Grant Jackson is going to be our representative in Commons. It's an overwhelmingly for him. This is not surprising. This is exactly what we expect in Brandon Souris. Portage Lisgar, as we said, Brandon Leslie, similar to here in Brandon Souris, like dare I say, a sweep. It's not even close. But again, this is what we expect here in the prairies and in Westman. Riding Mountain, same thing, a conservative sweep across the board. This is to be expected. This is how it has been for quite some time. The Green Party and the People's Party of Canada do have some votes here. They had no representative here in Brandon Souris. So it is interesting to see how other Westmen ones will be. Looking at Carney, as we said, he has taken victory in his riding. This was, I believe, to be expected. He has been quite popular recently. It is a very, very safe Liberal riding. No surprises here. Looking at Poilievre's riding. Oh, sorry, we're having a little bit of an issue. Poilievre's riding. This is quite remarkable, actually. He is continuing to fall behind his Liberal opposition. This will be very, very interesting to follow throughout the night to see if he continues to trail in the polls. It could be interesting. We could be losing a seat for both the Conservatives and the NDP leaders. Jagmeet is in 3rd place, which is where he was polling prior to the election. Yeah, it's gonna be something to follow if we lose both Poilievre and Jagmeet Singh's seats. That's all from me for results. Back to you, Kira.
Thank you very much, Erica. That's good for us to see all these different things. So, do we think that there is anything that we kind of was expected, unexpected, that we just saw from those results again since the last time?
Can I speak to your earlier point? You said the ACC decision desk, you didn't want to be first, you wanted to be right. Right now, what I'm getting from my sources is that we're now down to 2-seat difference between the Liberals and the Tories. So the people who earlier tonight called it as quickly as they did as a Liberal government, they in fact may need to retract. So we may end up learning a little bit more as we go in, later into the evening. This appears to be getting more exciting, not less so. Just a thought.
I think that's absolutely wonderful, Gary. I think that, we should all...
Rick, I'm sorry, but you have 10 seconds to wrap up whatever you're saying. WCG is... Okay, we have to go, unfortunately. WCG is waiting for us. We'll be back in 7 minutes. We shall see you soon and be back.
Okay, so we are back here in WCG TV studios. Now, this is our final segment, and I wish it wasn't. Because I think Kevin's going to get his surprise of the night. So this is pretty exciting. So what we're seeing here, this is kind of like our final segment, or in conclusion, our wrap up, but it feels like a cliffhanger ending because we're watching these numbers and, I know they've declared a Liberal minority. I know I called the Liberal majority for all that was worth. But this is neck and neck. So, Colin, tell us what you're seeing here. Colin's been our numbers man all night. Give us some numbers.
I am ready to tear my hair out because this is insane. So, for the last hour or so, CBC and CTV has projected that the Liberals are going to win. And I'm going to be the first one to say, shame on you guys for calling it that quickly. It is so stupidly close that I feel like it could flip at any second here. Why on earth are you guys saying we're going to project that the Liberals are going to win this? It is not over. As of right now, as of 10:21 p.m. Central Time, according to CTV, and in terms of overall elected seats, the Liberals have only a 92 to 89 lead. That's a 3-seat difference. And then if you include leading seats, it's 155 to 150. Yeah. Why are you projecting anything? It is so close. It could flip. I honestly think it could flip. The Liberals still hold the popular vote. They've kind of held that 100,000 to 110,000 vote lead for about the last hour or so. But I am shocked at how close it is and how much they were willing to
declare it.
Yeah, how early they wanted to declare it, because this is by no means over. And again, I know they say projected. We're not certifying anything, but and the other thing I want to talk about is, because since we're talking about how close this is, quickly let's look at some historical and see how close it used to be in the past. So 2 elections, it was very close. The first one was all the way back. I don't know if anyone was around at this time or could have seen it, but in the 1925 federal election, the Conservatives won 116 seats to the Liberals 101. So it was a 15-seat gap. But that's not the closest one. The closest was in 1972 when Pierre Trudeau and the Liberals won 109 seats, and the Conservatives won 107.
Oh, so
2 seats.
2 seats.
So I don't know if we're going to get as close to 1972 this time around, but it feels like this might be the closest one since then. It's shaping up to be potentially the 3rd closest, or if it's less than 15, it could be second.
Second closest in
which
history.
Would be what a time to be alive. Because when you think 1925, 1972, 2025, 100 years after that close 1925 election. So don't hold elections that end in the year 25, or else they're going to be so close We're sitting here at nearly 10:30, and I think it's by no means over.
Those are the best elections, so that's what makes it fun. So it's kind of fun because I'm getting my BC Actually Matters.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. I don't think I'm going to get my Happy Meal, but I'll live with that. That's okay. But Kevin, you might get your surprise.
I'm back in it, baby.
Okay, now I'm gonna let everyone know Kevin is still declaring a Conservative majority.
And I'm
Do you
right.
hold by that?
I'm absolutely no. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But I was watching the numbers incredibly closely while Cullen was speaking
Yeah.
because I was like, if we could just flip it, then I could not. But no, it's still a close race.
Yeah.
The popular vote has still got 100,000 separation towards the Liberals. So nothing to report on that. However, as you say, it's not over until the West Coast sings.
Until the West Coast sings. I will take that. I will
But
take
I
that win.
am predicting a blue wave, and the numbers aren't proving me wrong. They were in the beginning.
Yeah.
Some predictions were made. I'm going to reiterate what Cullen said. I don't think it's over. I think blue's still got a lot of fight left in it.
Again, I will just give a quick update. According to CTV, out of the elected seats, it's 94-93 for the Liberals.
Incredible.
One seat difference. Again, if you want to go to elected and leading, the
Yeah.
Liberals hold a 10-seat lead, 158 to 148. But come on, CBC CTV. You can't project anything. I would not project anything until everything's been certified. Like,
are you suggesting there's media bias?
None of that conspiracy
dun,
theory
dun.
stuff. We're not doing that. But I will say our friends over at Assiniboine College did say it's too early to call when they were
Yes, they
calling
did.
it. So good
That
on
is
you
true,
guys.
yes.
Good on you guys for recognizing that. I was ready to
Community TV
know.
for the win.
Yeah, community
well
TV
done.
for the win.
Love it.
And so, Kevin, you're getting some surprises. Colin, you're just going crazy over the numbers here. What about per riding? Was there any ridings that were interesting or flipped or anything? It looks like I think we have the one green. We have no green elected
We still
yet.
have a leading green. The big story, I think, is going to be the NDP. They're suffering a massive loss of popularity, and the Bloc has not, which means there's a major shift in power coming for the Bloc Party. And you always hope you root for the little guy. So
Yeah,
it's
the
sad to see
underdog,
the
yeah.
NDP take a hit like this. But like we were talking before, it's such a big election. People are really taking it seriously, except the French, of course. But no, I'm kidding. The Bloc are voting Bloc as they typically do. So the NDPs, sadly, are going to be the big losers in this election, it looks like.
I will say, so, because I didn't mention it before, but in terms of the actual elected seats, according to CTV, the NDP have only officially secured how many seats? You can count them on one hand.
Yeah. That's
One.
the
Just
problem.
one.
Just one.
Just one. And elected and leading, they are at 10.
Yeah.
So, okay, yeah, 10 seats is 10 seats, but every single election that Jagmeet Singh has been the leader, the NDP's seat totals have gone down, down,
Just
down,
like you
down.
predicted.
At what point do you pull the plug? But I think for our last segment, I think that was a pretty good way to summarize that.
Yes. So I guess still a little bit of a cliffhanger ending here, but that's our time. That's our sign off. So thank you, Kevin and Colin, for letting me come join you on election night.
Thank you.
And our night is not ending. I will tell you that right now. We are not going to bed because this election is not over, and we will be up watching it, and we will see what tomorrow brings.
Yeah. And we will see you back at the ACC studio soon. Take care.
Welcome back. The night is coming to a close here for us, but first, let's take one last look at the national picture. We know there's going to be a Liberal minority government.
That's right. Let's take a last look at the numbers and where the different parties are standing. So as we can see, Conservatives leading and elected in 148 ridings, the Liberals leading and elected in 157, NDP in 11, Green Party in 1, Bloc Québécois in 25. The gap between the Liberals and the Conservatives was quite close there for a little bit, but I believe it has now stretched back out. It is kind of, swinging back and forth a little bit, but it will almost certainly be a Liberal minority. Who will be their governing partner? Sometime during the night, we'll know if they are going to form a majority government, but we'll be fast asleep.
Yes, that is right, Erica. We unfortunately aren't going to be here till 2 a.m. So sorry for anyone who was wishing for that, but we are going to continue with any final thoughts from everyone here at the desk. We can go down the line. Ryan, do you have any final thoughts about your night here so far?
You know what? I'm going to be so honest, okay? I enjoyed the night because I learned so much. I am glad that I took the opportunity to come and host with you. I've had such a wonderful opportunity, as well as it was a good election to follow along, and I'm excited to see, you know, the final results as well. But it was lovely meeting all these guys and you know, learning from their knowledge as well. It was very wonderful. So thank you for that as well.
Very well said. You know, elections, you know, mean things. So we'll find out in the coming days and weeks what you know, what this looks like. I actually would counter what you just said, and I think it was a real pleasure for me to see the professionalism of the young people in the studio, the people behind the screens, you know, the people who are working back here. Of course, Erica was awesome. Everyone that I've had the opportunity to share the desk with, I mean, this is professionalism. It's fantastic. I couldn't be more excited about the future of our country.
Yeah, I'd have to echo the same things. I just want to thank everybody here again. Being alongside one of my professors is pretty awesome, and everybody here. I want to thank Erica again for her great insights, and both of you as well doing an amazing job on all this coverage and the fast flying information. I think the thing that I want to highlight is just that uncertainty can make things kind of bleak, but I think it's just we have to see through the fog, and I think that Mark Carney has been given the mandate by the people, so I think now it's Mark Carney's job to show that, and I think that Mark Carney has a lot on his plate. He's going to have to address a lot of issues that we have addressed in this election, and I think that's up to him now in his ball court. So yeah, and I think just thanks again for everyone here and all the wonderful insights that have been offered and provided today.
Yeah, I would echo with my my fellow panelists here. I think it's been an amazing experience, and all of you have just done an amazing job. I think I would just want to sort of leave off, and I don't want this to sound bleak, but this is kind of a time of chaos, right? It's a time when Canada is under pressure and under threat, and we can understand this both at an international level because Trump. You know, I want to see the news tomorrow. I want to see what Trump has to say about this. But it's not going to be great for Canada the way he responds, and there's pressure from within as well because we have the Bloc Québécois who is going to, at the current count, is going to have the balance of power, and that's as I say, there's pressure from both within and without. Sorry, that's kind of a bleak way to end it, but
it's an important thing to say.
Yes, exactly. I think it is very important. And I also think that we have a lot more important things to say, especially to the whole production that we are able to create here at the college. We, if you don't know, are actually just a student. This was a student production. First and second year college students have made this production for you on WCG that you've been watching all night. And we started our preparation to make this as soon as we knew that there was a federal election running. So we were kind of like the candidates. We had a month to get everything down and plan this whole thing. And it's the time to thank absolutely everyone that helped. We had around 30 plus students help this entire production become a thing. I want to thank the pizza guy that gave us pizzas earlier in the night, which was thanks to Assiniboine College, who graciously paid for those pizzas to be delivered for us here at the college, to help us get our night off on a right foot. And yes, everyone here in the production room, everyone, the college in general, for allowing us to have such a great program like this, where we are able to practice real things like a newscast, where we sit here and we talk about what's going on actually in our world, and we get to be young people practicing that, being in the field. I want to thank especially all of our guests that are not from the college and that came here on their own time to sit with us and give us their knowledge and their opinions and their thoughts and everything that helped contribute to our night to make it what it is. I want to thank Erica for being so great with the numbers and standing over there and grabbing things as she could. And I want to thank Ryan for coming along. Ryan doesn't even do journalism or anything right now. She's going into film, but she was so excited when Murray asked her to do this, and I really, really thank Ryan for sitting here all night with me. I want to thank our producers over there, Greg Sherris and Murray Oliver, for, you know, going with this crazy idea of following the federal election And I believe that was everybody. And thank you to WCG especially for being able to let us broadcast. And we are very grateful to have them as partners throughout the whole program here at Assiniboine. And
thank you to you as well, Karen. You've been a wonderful host.
And thank you to everyone.
You.
And thank you to everyone who decided to tune in and watch tonight, whether it was on the channel or streaming on WCG. We are thankful to anyone who was here to watch it with us. And thank you overall. I don't know how many times I've said thank you, but that's all the time we have for today. Goodbye and good night.